Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to StudyMoon.com. I'm Joe Dumond. I am your host, and we have a lot of other hosts here that you'll meet here in a few minutes. And before I get started, I want to thank all those who participate before services, doing the singing, the prayers, and the Aaronic blessing, and also the talk that we were able to do. Thank you. But I want to say one thing. Before we get to the prayer, it's about vanity. Vanity, being too shy. And being shy is really just being selfish, because you don't want other people to see how the talents that you have or the things that you need to improve on, or to see your weaknesses. Just so you know, Lori Don knows, and some of the others know, I can't spell. I got 41% all through high school in English. I only got 50% because they didn't want me to come back the next year. And yet here I am writing a newsletter, writing books. I hated religion. I'm teaching, teaching. It's unbelievable. I would be the last person I would pick to teach. So I'm saying this because I'm asking, well, secondly, but first of all, we need someone else to take over for the prayers for Sombra. And we also need to pray for Sombra. So I would like you all to keep that in mind, but I would like to see more men step up. And, you can do the prayers. We have the ladies, different people doing different singing each week. And that's awesome. No one is left with the great responsibility of doing it week after week, but Sombra is. So we need to rectify that. We've now been doing this a year and a half. So it's time to start to grow and others to take on that responsibility. And men or women, I'm not prejudiced, but if you're not a man, no, anyone can do it. But we just need more volunteers and we can rotate it. And I haven't even talked to Sombra about it yet, so she might be a little bit surprised that I'm even saying this. So, but there's other things going on, and we need more volunteers for the Aaronic blessing. We need more volunteers to do these teachings so that I can have a Sabbath off. When I finish today, I will sleep till noon tomorrow, and I'll be sort of in a vegetative state all day tomorrow, because this is a little bit stressful, just a little bit. But what I want to encourage you all is to learn to become pastors and teachers and leaders, so that when you leave StudyMoon.com and begin the Church of Thessalonica in Hawaii, you'll know what to do and you'll be able to do it. And that's the purpose that we're doing this. We're not trying to get a big following. It'd be different. I don't know what that would be like, but it'd be interesting to see the challenges of that. But we want to train you. Okay, so we can possibly get the copy of what Sombra goes over each week. She modifies it every once in a while, but we could get that, and that would be a start for people to practice. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there and have you start with that. Dean is going to start off with opening prayer today.
Dear Abba, thank you, Father. Thank you for this day. Thank you for your Sabbaths. Thank you for giving us your Sabbaths. Thank you for the people that are here and the people that are going to watch this, Father. You have called us and we've responded and we said yes to you, Father. And we're here and we ask that you bless us. We're here to learn about your attributes, to learn about you, to become Yeshua HaMashiach, Father, to become his image, to walk as he did, to walk out Halakha Torah as he did, Father. We ask that you strengthen us in this and bless us today with teachings that will help us to reach this goal of becoming perfect like you, Father. In the name of Jehovah, amen.
Amen. Thank you. And just while I'm doing my general announcements here right now, a couple, because we talked about them beforehand. Housekeeping rules. Please don't take the iPhone into the washroom when you go while we're doing services. If you do, make sure you turn off the mic and the camera. We don't need to see you or hear your business, okay? We also have a lot of things going on in everyone's individual homes, and you know, it's life, it's real life. Kids are welcome. If they scream, they're welcome. Turn off your mic. If you got people coming in and out of your room while you're doing services, that, you know, turn off your video. You know, it's great that we see your faces. I've also sent an email that I received this week to Glenn. I've been receiving emails from certain people for a long time. And I also want to remind you all to be careful what you say about different people and personal business, your personal affairs. We are publicly watched, and there are certain people you wouldn't want to know certain things about you, okay? So just be mindful that we are publicly being watched. And I don't know who by who, but sometimes they write me. And anyway, just be careful, okay? Now, today, we are doing the Torah portion. Have I forgot something, Randy? Did I forget something yet? No, we're doing the Torah portion, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just
wanted to talk about the fires.
Yes, that's what I forgot. Thank you, Sombra. Thursday night, I went to bed and I turned on the news for a minute, and there's a fire out in Colorado. And I thought, wow, this is a weird time of year for having a wildfire in Colorado. It's, you know, I thought they had like 17 feet of snow, but I guess that was over in California somewhere. And I just went to bed, didn't think nothing of it, and woke up the next morning and got, wow, what just happened? And I got an email from Batman, and I've asked him if he would come on here and just talk a little bit about what happened, because he lives there. And if you want, go ahead, Mike.
Sure, I'll jump in before Dean does the opening prayer. I'll have to admit, people have thought I'm from Gotham. I've even said that, but I'm actually from Colorado. So that was just a cover story. You know, superheroes have to have cover stories, you know. But to rewind and talk about what's happened in Colorado, on the Sight of Moon website, I put a link in the comments on the December 31st newsletter to NBC Nightly News full broadcast for December 31st. You can look that up on YouTube, use that title for people watching this later. In Colorado, we, like other places, we've kind of had a drought, so we've not had the snowfall you expect. They do have snow here, but it's kind of odd to most people. You know, they call it global warming, but we know who's in control of the globe and who warms it. We know Jehovah does these things. And what happened, what you were speaking of, the fires, we had essentially, they called them unusual winds, unexplained winds. We had winds that started at 100 miles an hour and then had gusts up to 200 miles an hour. And they said it's hurricane strength winds. And you'll see that in the news report. There's a family they're at Chuck E. Cheese's, which is in America, that's a pizza restaurant where you take kids, they have video games, and they can win stuffed animals, that type of thing. Fun family atmosphere, but they show them, you know, struggling to survive and holding on their kids. They don't get blown away, and the fire coming, very serious situation. And they make it out, and it's interesting. The woman speaking on camera, she says, "I said a prayer for my kids," and she said, "I said it for their sake." And the news just passed over. They usually don't include this, but of all the destruction that happened, her home actually made it through the fires there. And but when you'll look at the devastation, you'll see this isn't the typical fire you'll see in the mountains where there's trees on fire. This is subdivisions. This is your young urban professionals, you know, hundreds and hundreds. They say now it's over 1,000 homes destroyed. It's a whole city in Colorado. Superior, Colorado, sits between Boulder and Denver. What's not spoken of, there were some other fires around near my house. I live about 30 minutes south, but near my house, a few miles north of me, there was a fire that just hit grasslands, stopped before it hit any houses. Likewise, there was one west of me, about a mile west, that was put out a day before that happened, that stopped at the roads and didn't burn any houses down. But they don't understand it, and they're thinking maybe it's power lines that came down, because, like you said, this isn't wildfire season, but the conditions are there because of the drought. So very unusual. Usually by this time we've had 20 inches of snow, easily by this time of year. But the thing was, during this happened, I know what's going on. I know it's judgment. And I don't want to look and say, well, look at those people, what they did. They just did winter solstice, Hanukkah, Christmas. There was a big thing about Diwali, and there's another one. I forget the name of it. It was invented by a guy that got arrested back in the 70s. He did a black movement and made his own winter solstice day. That's been all over the news, and that's what they're doing. And I could say, well, look at the judgment that's happening because of what they did. But instead, I prayed for mercy, and I know other people did too. And the mercy that came is they couldn't put the fires out because of the wind. And little did I know that, like I said, there were fires near my house. I didn't know about those because all the news covered was the big destruction. But what happened was, as the Sabbath started yesterday, the snow started falling. And I woke up this morning and we have 9 inches of snow, which is about 15 centimeters. Actually, about a half a foot when I woke up. It's 9 inches now. So 15 centimeters when I woke up this morning. And I went to, we have a website in Colorado. You look at it for fires, avalanches, the crazy stuff that happens in the mountain highlands. And there's 0 fires in Colorado now. So it was a direct answer to prayer. Jehovah, he sends the wind, he causes the fires, but he also has mercy and sends the snow, the moisture, and stops the fire. So I'm glad to see the mercy. I hope people understand what's happening, and that's kind of our responsibility here. I'm kind of taking going on the theme what Joe said a minute ago, the stepping up. Somebody asked me in chat beforehand about the lesson books and other things. There's lesson books and there's lessons on Sighted Moon's website that I don't jump out and say, oh, I helped with this or I helped with that. But the point that I did help with those was to show other people in here that anybody can do these things. And in fact, we have a misunderstood idea of what a prophet is. A prophet is simply someone who speaks the Torah. Everybody here is called to be prophets, priests. We'll be kings. We'll be judging angels and stuff. So our job is actually to be prophets, not fortune tellers like most people think prophets are, but prophets that teach the Torah, prophets that teach the scriptures. And that's what Sighted Moon's done, trying to teach. That's what I looked at as an opportunity when Joe says we want men to step up. Rather than for me personally to step up in the prayers and the more visible stuff, I've stepped up in the behind the scenes stuff, but it's an opportunity to put your beliefs out there, learn, grow, and also contribute and help people and actually be that prophet that we're called to be. So I know that wasn't what you asked me about direct, but from that understanding of helping with that, it helped me understand when I seen what was happening around me to react. My heart immediately reacted in asking for mercy. And I seen King David do that in the scriptures. When he seen a plague coming, he went out and asked for mercy and asked for forgiveness, and the plague stopped. That's what happened. And I'm very glad of that. So I'll stop talking and let Joe jump back in here. I can tell he's nodding and thinking of things.
No, I'm saying awesome. This is awesome. And you're right. Thank you very much, Mike. And yeah, Mike has done a number of things for us behind the scenes and not wanted his name out there. And I understand it and I appreciate that. But yeah, you are all called to be prophets. The moment you open your mouth and begin to talk and quote the Torah, you became a prophet. Right? And it's not, sorry.
I want to add one other thing to it when you're done. It's a discussion opener before we get to the Torah portion, but I'll let you, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, did you want to say, okay, no, go ahead, say what the other thing was.
Yeah, the other thing on my mind, you mentioned this in the newsletter, Briefly, we've talked about it before. There's a scripture, Matthew 24, I believe it's 24:20, and it's also Mark 13:18. I believe it's pray that your flight not be in winter. A lot of people will see disasters happen and they'll say, well, shoot, this place has fires, I'm leaving. Or this place has flooding, I'm leaving. This place has this or that, I'm leaving. My advice to people that are seeing these judgments happen is pray that your flight doesn't happen in winter. We know that the winter feast, what they represent, the trumpets that are blown in Revelation, we know that the tribulation starts with these trumpets, those 10 years of awe that are represented by the fall feast. Pray. The verb there is pray that your flight doesn't happen during those times. I know those times are coming. I know they're here. I'm not reacting and moving right now. Although everything in my mind says, yeah, move to Hawaii, like you said a moment ago, move somewhere, move to the Philippines, move to Guam, move somewhere safe. You're safe in the arms of Jehovah. And when he says move, go, don't make preemptive mistakes. In the meantime, take advantage of this time to learn and grow so that when he does call you to go somewhere else, or if he calls you to go somewhere else, you'll know it's from him and not from your own emotions. So I wanted to toss that out there, but that's really a discussion thing that's come up a few times. People have asked in this Sabbath thing, well, where do we go? What do we do? And you've talked about it. But my advice to people is when you see this happen, remember that verb, pray. Pray that your flight won't happen in those times. But that's all I was going to add. Sorry about that for interrupting.
No, don't be sorry. That's awesome advice.
And we've not forgotten about you, Dean, just so you know.
No, you may have missed it, but Dean did do the opening prayer already.
Oh, that's what I said about. I have to leave the room occasionally because I have family stuff going on like other people, so I left the room for like 2 minutes, and came back, and I missed your prayer, Dean. So I was like waiting for. I was in eager expectation, Dean. I missed it. Dean did a teaching or two a while back, and I really enjoyed it. So when I heard he was on the prayers, like, oh, I'm looking forward to that. But then my wife called me from the other room.
That's okay. So anyway, I just briefly on what he just said, what Mike just said about the Matthew 24 is pray that your flight not be in winter. So in winter starts on the first day of the 7th month. And if your flight is today in winter, those people in Colorado, they're out in the cold and they're sheltering with friends and family. And it's not just those 10,000 homes that were lost. There's also 10,000 other people that are now inconvenienced where they've been put up, right? There's also those who aren't put up that are in arenas or, shelters with other people helping to take care of them. So it's not just 10,000, it's a big deal. We've lost Lytton, BC this summer. We lost Pasadena, California. We had the fire go through Fort McMurray. I don't know, there's a number of other cities. What used to be a once in a terrible time when a city got partially burnt, now it's happening regularly. It's becoming the new normal. So pray your flight not be in winter. Pauline, when we were talking about this, we had to talk about this at one of our leadership meetings recently, and Pauline wrote me afterwards and says she looked up the word, pray that your flight not be on the Sabbath. It's not just Saturday. Pray that you're not fleeing on Saturday. Well, what would be so wrong with that? Oh, okay, it's inconvenient. You don't get to worship. You don't get. What about the holy? Well, okay, it's not just that. But it's also pray that your flight not be on a Sabbaton is the word, which also includes a sabbatical year. The sabbatical year is also included in that. And the sabbatical year comes up in 2023. So just think about that in relation to everything that we know about the 4th sabbatical cycle and what's going on and where we are in Jehovah's time clock. And I'm just going to leave that there so you can think about it, because we're not going to talk about that today. We got a ton of stuff to talk about today. And we're just going to do the ordinary, boring Torah portion. But man, I took a quick look at it last night, and yeah, I had to make some notes. I'm excited. So we're going to start off And we're reading Exodus 21. Today, who's our first reader? Kurt,
Yes, you get Kurt again for the first reader.
go ahead, Kurt. And we got a bunch of stuff here. So
What did you say? Exodus 21?
21. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, normally when Kurt starts reading, I usually interrupt him before he gets going.
Right. That's okay. I'd like to just add to what Mike said. There's this Isaiah 11 says that he's going to assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah. Well, that's all us, right? But there's also another one, and I can't come up with it right now, but it says that to wait for Jehovah to basically be our signal or to lead us out, and that he will be our rear guard. That's the key word that I can remember. If you're going to look it up, it's about him being our rear guard. So wait for it. You know, it's my character to run off and do something because I think I should. But in this case, we're told to wait, hide in our room and wait so that when he takes us out, he's our rear guard. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with you. I know we're getting in between the reading. You're getting mad at us, Joe, but yeah, that's I agree, and it takes maturity, and I give you some maturity in my own life. Years ago, I was one of these prepper guys. You know, I built a house, farm, and you know, I was the prepper dude, and you know, I owned that place for a year and moved. You know, but a lot of work went into it. But one of the advantages of it, it helped me in keeping the sabbatical year. I know how to do food storage. But the thing is, that was my immature self thinking. And the mature self thinking is, how do I hear from Jehovah? How do I get my heart right? You know, that type of stuff. And we're having a very gracious, good, peaceful time now to be able to do that. And I just encourage people to take advantage of it. You know, take advantage of the learning and so that you can hear and understand. Because yeah, there will be a time when we have to do that, and the waiting will be over, and we will be assembled, and that'll be the time to do it. And we got to understand and hear that. I worry sometimes that, like when the two witnesses come, I worry that a lot of Christianity won't even recognize it because they've not gotten that maturity yet. And I'm hoping that I'm mature enough to recognize the time and the seasons.
Yep. And we see in the chat that Shane is also in Colorado, if I remember correctly, and he was also near those fires as well. Okay, Kurt.
Okay, we'll get on with it, eh? Okay, Exodus 21. Now these are the judgments which you shall set before them. Okay, now I gotta give you I'm going to interrupt myself because I have to apologize here. I had a tooth pulled a couple weeks ago, and it is affecting my speech. It feels like I got a stick stuck in my mouth or something. I don't know. I'm slurring and I'm not forming words properly. So if I don't sound like my usual self, well, I'm not quite all here anymore. I'm one tooth less. So sorry about that. Now these are the judgments which you shall set before them. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he shall serve 6 years. And in the 7th, he shall go out free and pay nothing. If he comes in by himself, he should go out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his masters have given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her masters, and he shall go out by himself. But if the servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free.
Okay,
Then
hang
his
on, Kurt.
master.
Hang on. So understand the chronology here. We've just arrived at Mount Sinai, and in chapter 19, we've seen Jehovah come down. We've had Jehovah speak the 10 Commandments from Mount Sinai, over 2 million people heard his voice in chapter 20. Now, the very first thing that we're reading, the very first thing in chapter 21, which is the earliest time that we've ever heard about the sabbatical years, is just right here, what Kurt just read. What I'm pointing out is they are that important that they are first on the list of all these other things that are going to be talked about now. So when I first started talking about this, the people that were challenging me said, well, if this is part of God's law, we've never heard of this, then it's going to be in the initial Mount Sinai covenant. And they came back and they started reading it. And between chapter 21, I believe chapter 24 and chapter 34, they said yes, because chapter 34 is when it's all wrapped up. This is the agreement that we've agreed to. And sure enough, the sabbatical and jubilee years are right there at the very beginning. It's part of the covenant. And it's the first part that's spoken of. What should that be telling you? Pay attention to this subject, learn about this subject. It envelops everything else that you know about Torah. And that's all I've done, is start to study that. And now everything else has become involved in it. So anyway, I just want to point that out. Okay, Kurt.
Okay. Verse 6. Then his master shall bring him to the judges. He shall also bring him to the door, or to the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. And if a man sells his daughter to be a female slave,
Okay, hang on. Let's just stop. Okay, that's just one little verse. You know, we're going to have trouble getting through today. It's going to be a long day. Okay, so with this verse, my first note is Psalm 40, verses 6 and 7. And we're going to do a little bit of a study here now. So Kurt, just hold your finger there. We're going to come back to you maybe in about an hour's time.
Okay.
So Psalm 40, verse 6 and 7. Psalm 40.
Want me to read those?
Well, if you can get there before I do.
I'm there.
Verse. Okay, go ahead.
Psalm 40, verse 6. Sacrifice and offering you did not desire. My ears you have opened. Burnt offering and sin offering you did not require. Then I said, behold, I come. In the scroll of the book it is written of me.
Okay, so what's the scroll of the book? The scroll of the book is the first 5 books of the Torah.
Yeah,
Those first 5 books, the Torah, the Torah, the first 5 books, that's explaining who Jehovah is. In this week's newsletter, the woman at the well says 5 husbands. Jehovah said, yeah, well, he's talking about the 5 Torah scrolls. So what's that got to do with chapter Exodus 21, verse 6? Okay. We're going to talk about something here for a little bit. It's your commitment. It's your commitment. I used to go to Catholic church every Sunday and sit in the pew with my family and let everyone know that I'm a good Catholic father and man. And it was all BS. I was just faking it. I just want everyone to think I was good. Right? So we're talking here about if your servant plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. We're talking about being a bond servant here. When you pierce the ear against the awl, or with the awl against the door, the blood on that, from that ear, from that piercing, where does it land?
Threshold.
It lands on the threshold. You've heard us talk about the threshold covenant. the threshold covenant, where the lambs are killed at Passover time. And when they're killed at Passover time, that blood is collected in a bowl in the corner of the threshold. That's where the covenants are made. Okay? So this covenant that you're making with Jehovah by piercing your ear and that blood going on that threshold is significant. It's like, I'm sealing this deal with my own blood. It's like, you're putting your two thumbs together. Okay, so now jump over to Deuteronomy 15. Deuteronomy 15 and 12 to 17. Deuteronomy 15 verses 12 to 17. If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year, you shall let him go free from you. So what we just talked about, same first 6 verses here. Verse 13, and when you send him away free from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. You shall supply him liberally from your flock and from your threshing floor and from your winepress. From what the Lord has blessed you with, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore, I command you this thing today. And if it happens that he says to you, I will not go away from you, because he loves you and your house, since he prospers with you, then you shall take an awl and thrust it through his ear to the door, and he shall be your servant forever. Also to your female servants, you shall do likewise. Okay? So now my next note says Philippians 2. Why am I going to Philippians 2? Philippians 2, let's go there. Philippians 2 verses 5 and 8. Philippians 2 verses 5 and 8. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God. Listen carefully. But made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. Who did this? Jehovah did. Jehovah became a bondservant, well, basically to himself, but, right? What does that mean? When you become a bondservant, what does that mean?
It means that you have the authority that your master has given you, and he's the only one that can supersede it.
Yeah, but I'm going to disagree with you, Glenn.
He gives you your signet ring is what goes in your ear. His signet ring is his authority.
Yeah, but
Okay.
it's more about willingly choosing
Of
to
course.
put yourself in submission to your master.
That's why
Okay.
he said, I put you go and you say, if I love my family and I love my master, and then he's to put you up against the door or the threshold and pierce your ear, and he puts his signet ring in your ear.
Okay, I'm not going to just.
Yeah, that's the symbolism of it.
But basically, when you become a bondservant, you give up all
Everything.
your rights.
You have nothing, and it's all his.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for.
Yes, you're representing him. You have nothing of your own. That's
right.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the thing I'm looking for. So
It's kind of like a shaliach too. A shaliach doesn't come with his own voice. An angel or a messenger doesn't come with his own voice. He comes and he speaks only the voice of his master.
Okay, so an angel is created by Jehovah to be servants to Jehovah. Human beings were created with the choice to obey him or not obey him. We got that choice. And I'm not, well, okay, angels got that choice too. We got the Satan, right? Okay, so I'd better throw that out the door. Okay, James. And while James is talking, we're going to go to Matthew 20 next. Go ahead, James.
Would that not be the same basic principle as when the disciples were sent out? They were told not to take possessions, not to take extra sandals, not to take extra clothes, food, anything else. Is that not like a description of a bond servant? Because their provision would come from Jehovah. Don't pack extra clothes, don't bring extra sandals, don't bring extra food or money or anything. Basically go. As an example, you're trusting in Jehovah. Because everything that you would require would come from him in
So-
the journey.
Makes sense.
So in my notes here, now see, James has a bit of an advantage. James and I were not talking about this. We were talking about something else. And I may have been talking about this with Sombra and with Pauline as well. And I did mention in the newsletter, have we committed an act of Achan here? And I was looking at me. I wasn't looking at all of you, but I put it out to all of you as well. But I was looking at me. Have I done something? Why are we struggling to get this message out? Nobody can prove it wrong. Why is it so hard to get out? Maybe it's timing. I don't know. James, James and I are racking our brains out. I believe the answer to that is what we're talking about here now.
Yes.
Yes, who's that, Glenn?
Yeah. It's
Yes, what?
obvious.
What's obvious? Tell me.
Well, it's a hard message to basically the message that we're getting is that we are to give up our worldly affairs and give ourselves up to him. He's to provide everything. And if you have that faith and you live that faith, you're his bond servant. Just like another example in the scriptures was Joseph. He became the bond servant to the Pharaoh, and he was given everything he needed, including Goshen for his family.
Okay, have you got, well, see, I never thought of Joseph. Have you got a scripture that says he was a bondservant?
No, but it's still the same. He got the signet ring, the same thing. Remember the signet ring I was telling you about?
I'm not disagreeing with you. I just
The
never thought of
Pharaoh
that.
gave it to him and basically said, everything under me is in your hands until there's something, it's weird, it's written weirdly, until there's something that the master needs involvement with. But he basically had control of the entire of Egypt, except the master had more control. That was the only person above Joseph.
And he was
Isn't-
also willing to do that when he was under Potiphar.
Yes.
He was also willing to put himself in submission to Potiphar, everything except for his wife, basically.
He showed that example with Potiphar in the jail. He had everything in the jail was under his control.
I have to go back and read Joseph now because I never thought of him as a bondservant. I just never crossed my mind, but I think you might be right. Target, you had your hand up there a moment ago. Welcome, and go ahead. You have to turn your mic on.
Yeah. I was just about to agree with what everyone was just saying. Totally agree. Because he was sold into slavery by the Ishmaelites, and he was bought by Potiphar, he obviously is now a bond servant or a slave, one of a better word. So yeah, and he got elevated in Potiphar's house to the point says, okay, just do my book, sort out everything, except for, as Sambra said, except for he limited himself to the wife, really.
Yeah.
And when he gets to Pharaoh level, the Pharaoh says, you're in charge of everything. Only when I sit in the seat, at the throne, I'm in charge. So totally agree
Exactly.
with what everyone just said. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Where are you from? And welcome to Side of the Moon.
Yeah. I'm from Birmingham in the UK. I try to come on here some Shabbats, but sometimes I'm teaching, and I like what Sambra's done, because this is one of the first times I've actually listened to Sambra and cantations, which she did earlier.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome. And if you have to go teach, no problem. But thank you for being here. Frank's your neighbor too. He's in Ireland there. Frank, go ahead. And after Frank, I'm going to go back to Matthew. Oh, Mike got his hand up there. Okay. Go ahead, Frank.
Okay. Part of this is a cultural thing too, because back in the day of Yeshua, when you became a rabbi's disciple, he took care of everything. You were his problem. If he took you on, you were his problem. So this is not in our culture at all. So when Yeshua had 12 or 70 disciples, he was responsible for them. And when in the culture, if you were going to become somebody's disciple, you knew this guy is going to take care of me, so I don't have to worry. So it was almost a big deal if you got to be somebody's disciple. But academically, it was a big deal if you got to be a disciple of Gamaliel or one of the big teachers, because that meant that you were a Torah, a very expert Torah person. You knew a lot of it in your head. You had most of it in memory and all the rest of it. That's what Paul was. He was that kind of a guy before he became, if you like, self-employed,
Okay,
all
very
right.
good. Thank you, Frank. Mike, Mike's gonna be the last one, and then we're gonna go to Matthew 20 here.
I just want to jump in while you're still in Exodus 21:2. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he served for 6 years, and 7th year shall go free and pay nothing. I assume you'll go there here eventually, but I want to toss it out. We were on that scripture, just the whole calendar, the 6th millennium, and then we have a 7th millennia that were free. So figure you're going that direction eventually, but I'm going to throw it out there just in case.
Don't know.
In our old age, we went
wasn't
past.
going in that direction, so throw it out there, Mike. That's good.
Yeah. But yeah, we're in slave to sin. Mankind is right now. I hate to say, even though we're free through Christ, we're dealing with sin right now, but we'll be free. And then that 7th millennia is a gift to those who enter into his rest. So just thought I'd toss that out there. When I read that, that's what I think. I thought you were going that direction.
Actually, there's a lot of different ways I'm going here, but that wasn't one of them. So yeah, in the 7th millennium, we will be free. This is what this represents. Every slave in the 7th year, every Hebrew slave in the sabbatical year was set free. And that represents the 7th millennium.
Yeah, I'm going to make a point too, and I'd not seen this till today. You said, here's what's said immediately after the 10 commandments in Exodus 20. And this hits me as people often say the law, the Torah, the commandments, I'm free from that bondage, and incorrect teachings. And what they don't see is the first thing he tells you as their commandments is here is when you'll be set free. These commandments, keeping his Torah through Christ, we're set free. And this is the promise we have, as he shows that we'll have that time of rest with him. So to me, it's, people that dig into the Torah, they'll see prophecy in the Torah, and I've seen it here. So it's kind of exciting. Hadn't seen that before today. So a reason to watch the Sabbath lessons, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's good points. And yeah, I hadn't really realized it till as we were reading it. I said, man, that's the very first thing after that. Yes. Okay, Matthew 20, 25 and 28. Matthew 20, 25 and 28. Where are you? But Jesus called them to himself and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. Okay, Jehovah didn't come to be served, but to serve. So like, get that in my brain. Like, think about that. And to give his life a ransom for many. You are called to do what? You're called to be servants. You're called. What does that mean? Does that mean you just sit back there and I'm just going to enjoy all these clowns talking on Shabbat and I'm not going to say nothing? I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to open up my mouth and maybe, somebody will correct me or maybe I'll say something stupid or I'm better than them. That's not serving. Target. Is Target your first name? Is that the proper
No,
name?
it's Clev. It just happens to be on my phone as it comes across, and I can't be bothered to change it.
You said Clev.
That's right.
C-L-E-V. Okay, go ahead, Clev.
Right. So the whole idea is that if you're a king of your country, you in Near Eastern time, you are seen as a father. You're seen as the one that provides everything for your nation. And Yeshua, who will be King of Kings, he's actually doing what he's supposed to be, serving his people. We see, depending on which country you live in, the UK, the people are called ministers. They don't minister. They don't actually go out to serve the people. They actually expect the people to serve them, which is incorrect. So the idea is that the Messiah comes to give an example of how kings are meant to rule, to look after their people, make sure that, especially when he comes to rule and reign, he does what, quote unquote, we've supposedly heard from the World Economic Forum, a reset. He resets and says, okay, and as someone mentioned, now when you're as servant get to that 7th millennium, he is supposed to furbish you with everything you need so that you never come back to be a servant. So all of that is what's in scripture, and obviously a lot more. So the idea of being the king is that you're supposed to look after your people, not do like the Creator says, if you go and have one of these kings from the earth, they will take advantage of your children, have horses, multiply their houses all onto themselves, and basically ignore you. So he was doing what the kings of the world do. He was doing the kings of the world don't do, sorry.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
good.
that's the sovereign and the suzerain king. The sovereign king rules over the subordinate kings and provides the provision and protection, and the suzerain kings provide the service that the king needs. So there's a two-way relationship there as well.
It's a similar thing, Glenn, but I try not to get, we're trying to stay focused on the bond servant, which is an individual person.
Yes.
And you're right in what you're saying, and I see the relationship, yes, but that's like a one kingdom versus another kingdom, or one race of people. But keep it focused on, because we're talking about the bond servant here. It's that individual, that's you. It's each of you.
Yes. You're giving yourself up for serving your master.
Okay, so I have a note here, in order to be great, and let's just pick on Glenn here. In order for Glenn to be great, the great Glenn Caron, Glenn has got to serve all of us. I'm going to have fun with this. No, but you.
That's what I'm here for.
All of you have got to serve not just each other, not just your families, but those people that Jehovah is serving. because he's using you to do his bidding. And so this one scripture that Kurt's read is very big. So now I got a few more here. I want to read, and I forgot who mentioned it. Samba, I got 7 scriptures. Can I read them first? Or you want to go first? Go ahead. Okay. 2 Peter 1:1. 2 Peter 1:1. Where are you? And if somebody gets there, go ahead. There, I got it. 2 Peter 1:1. Simon Peter, a bondservant of the apostle of Yeshua. He calls himself a bondservant. Romans 1:1. And somebody gets there before there it is right there. Paul, a bondservant of Yeshua, called to be an apostle, separated to the gospel of God. Revelation 1:1. The revelation of Yeshua, which God gave him to show his servants things which must shortly take the place, and he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. Now, I didn't look that up. Is his servant John a bondservant, or is it just a servant? It could be both. I'm not sure.
You know, the word bond is extremely important. A bond denotes security, a value, and
The bond
bond is a
would
debt.
signify willingness versus a servant who is just, okay, I have to do this.
It's a debt that you're owed, that you owe. It's a debt that you owe. If you're a slave, you obviously are a slave because you owe a debt of some form or another.
What about a captive
A
slave?
mutual relationship between the master and the bond servant, because you're bound.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, in the world of bonds or securities, a bond is a security. A security has a value.
Right.
And
So a regular servant can be sold, whereas a bond servant doesn't get sold. He has security to stay in that household.
I don't believe that's the case. A bond servant is a covenant too. So the covenant is a contract, and a contract supersedes a lot of things. But I'm just throwing it out there. Bond, it's not just a servant, it's a bond servant. There's some value there. And in this case, we're bond servants to Jehovah or to Yeshua because we have to pay our debt. And our debt was the debt of death, okay? Because we sinned. It's a debt.
Let me jump back in here. Hang on, Samba. While you're at Revelation, flip over to Jude 1. Jude 1, verse 1. Jude, a bondservant of Jesus Christ, the brother of James. And then I have James 1:1. And where'd you go?
I think it's interesting that these proclamations that someone is a servant is the first verse as your introduction.
Yes, James, a bondservant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. So each of these epistles is declaring that they are a bondservant. And then I got Revelation 22, back to Revelation 22, verses 3 and 4. (22, 3 and 4). And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him. They shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads. So Patty said here in the side that Revelation 1:1 says bondservants in the NASB, and I'm using the MKV here. So mine says servants. I wonder if it says bondservants here for, it's the bondservants who are going to see him face to face. Okay, so that's the scripture I want to, and I got some more here. Go ahead, Sombra.
So when you're in a position of being a servant to someone, it doesn't mean that you don't have those feelings of self. It just means that you have to take those feelings of self and it's like you have to bite your tongue and you have to go and have your crying pity party, like away in a corner, away in a room, because you don't have the right to, I mean, you can speak out, but then you get disciplined for it.
Well, no, Daniel was in front of the king and he wasn't, he was sad. He wasn't allowed to look sad, and he was sad in front of the king, and the king asked him why. And Daniel told him.
Yeah.
And then the king said, well, let's fix this. So,
Right. When
okay.
you're in that position of servant, though, you also have to have the appropriate lines of authority. And right now I'm personally struggling because I don't know where the appropriate lines of authority are. And it's a real struggle to not know in that moment who your master is. And I'm not talking about my heavenly master. I know exactly who my heavenly master is, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I have this thing that I'm going through right now, and I don't know who my earthly master is, and I don't know if I hold any authority myself. I don't know. Anyhow, it's a real struggle. And choosing to be a servant is really dying to yourself. Like, I really feel like I've been put at the bottom of the barrel at the moment.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna leave that one alone. Okay. Now,
may I say something?
Just 1 second, Paul. Back here in Revelation 22, verse 3, Patty also chimed in on the chat that it was bond servant. So yes, and I guess she's using the NASB. Okay, Paul, go ahead, quick.
In scripture, Randy listened to Gary a week or two ago. A servant is also, when you're a servant, you can't be a prophet unless you are a servant. So when you do servanthood, God says the prophetic will come out of you because you'll say what the master wants you to say. Sombra is wondering where she stands. God says, wives, obey your husbands. But when God looks at that and us as the bride, he has given us responsibilities to be what we're meant to be. He's put in us everything we need to do, but the head of that is being a servant to him, which then implies that we were given what Joseph was given, control of our household. That also comes down to when Naboth and David came to Naboth and said, you know, give us some food. We need some food. And Naboth said, no, I'm not worried about it. I'm eating and drinking. And his wife realized that she had to turn around and disagree with her husband and do what was required to save the household from David's wrath, because he would have wiped them out, because the army was also a servant to the people of Israel. Now, I didn't think of that before, but just then it sort of came to me.
Okay. James Bond. Okay, yeah. Susa, go ahead.
Well, I have a friend who's from Ethiopia, and she has Jewish heritage. And I was talking to her about this discussion that we had probably about a year ago at service. And she said, well, let me tell you what it is, because I find she walks right out of the scripture, because that's old customs held in place there. She said, the bond servant is normally for them, and this is in action and in play when she grew up, it's a relative. And that relative has some kind of probably financial need, or the family of the relative has a financial need. They'll take that relative in and they become a bond servant for the stipulated time, 7 years. And then when they send them away, they load them all up with all of these things, you know, I mean, good things and supplies and money and all that. And then they send them back to their family, and it blesses the family. And she told me, she said, that is why I am not so close to my mother. She was closer to the bondservant who was in her home and got a relationship with the bondservant, and not really as much strong with her mom when she was a little girl. So just some insight from an Ethiopian who's keeping these customs from ancient times.
That is just amazing. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of this, and it's amazing. Sarkis. Thank you, Sousa.
You know, the first time it mentions about being servant.
Just hang on, Sarkis. Sousa, you got your hand back up. Did you want to say something else before we move on?
I'm sorry, trying to put it down.
Oh, okay. No, go ahead, Sarkis. Thank you.
The first time the word servant mentions is in Jacob. In Genesis chapter 29, when he went to Laban and he offered to serve him 7 years to get Rachel. And I think that's the model we need to look at, because what we see here, he is willing to put himself under Laban as a servant. The word bondservant is more of an English term versus the Hebrew word servant means beyond that, because it's about buying and selling. You're exchanging, it's bartering. You know, and what Sousa was talking about earlier about the Ethiopian culture there, she's absolutely right. That they bartered, and you basically, okay, you are in need. I'll take care of your need, but you got to pay for it this way, and by working for me, being under my authority, and here are the conditions. And we see the model in Jacob. That's why that's why he was called Israel. And that's what Yeshua emulated. He came and said, okay, we are sinners. We have broken the Torah. We are walked away from Jehovah. And he's saying, okay, I am going to be a servant to rescue, to buy you back. And that's exactly the model in Jacob.
Isn't that what he did when he wrestled in the ladder to heaven and he fought with Yeshua? He made a covenant right then and there that said, if you take care of me and my family, I surely will give you a tenth. I believe that's how, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
So not only that, not only that, you hear the first time sabbatical years is mentioned in Genesis. So you're seeing a pattern. Torah was given in Genesis. It's just that it was written down in Exodus so you're seeing a pattern here that it was already there in Genesis, and the practice was there. Laban says, okay, we have a deal, and he gives him a wife, but he forgot. Jacob didn't owe him anything. He actually bartered the opposite of what normally it's expected. You are in debt, and when you go to become a servant, and if you marry, your master owns your wife and the children, not you. Because in Genesis chapter 31, when Laban goes after Jacob, when Jacob ran away with his wife, children, and the cattle and the sheep, Laban went after him and said to him, these are my daughters, my children, my cattle. And Jehovah had to remind him not to touch them. Because
not by Torah, not what we just read. Exodus 21 says exactly or 2 or 3. It says, if you marry and you want to leave, you can take your wife. If she has children, they're the masters. You, the wife and the children, are the masters. And then if you want to stay, then you become a bondservant. I'm again paraphrasing.
Yeah, but here Jacob did it the opposite. Okay, he did not sell himself. In a sense, he worked for it. That's a difference.
Well, he made himself a bondservant for those 7
Right.
or 6
to
years.
to pay for
His wife.
his wife.
Yeah.
And the point here is we have a pattern of sabbatical pattern, and then we have a pattern of what Yeshua did. He didn't owe anybody anything. We actually owe it. And he came to save us, to
But he
rescue us
made,
from bondage.
he did it voluntarily. He didn't owe us the debt. He didn't owe the debt to Jehovah. You know, I know he's one and the same, but he didn't owe the debt. We owed the debt. He said, I'm going to pay for that debt. So I'm going to put myself into bond servitude in order to remedy the situation and take on the punishment you deserve.
Okay. Very good. Let's, okay, I got Clev and Sombra. Then we're going to try and wrap this up so Kirk can finally finish reading that one little short chapter. He is so slow at reading. Clev, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think agreeing with, I think Sombra had mentioned, and I think everybody else has mentioned, is being a bond servant is because you've got a debt. And somebody mentioned, yeah, my debt is that that I've done sinful things, and therefore the Messiah has paid for them. So now I'm a bond servant, and that means my wife and the children that we have, I cannot leave unless I'm going to leave them with the master. But if I stay, that's good. I just nail my ear, which means I'm going to shema to the rules and regulations of the house. Simple as that. But I had to pay. Being a bond servant is my debt being paid. But I know when I get released from it in the 7th millennium, I get furnished with all sorts of good things, so that I don't come back in again to be a servant. And while I'm a servant, a bond servant, I'm taught, because as Exodus 20 says, you're not allowed to make your or your servant, male servant and female servant, work on the Shabbats. So it's all good, so to speak.
Very good. Sombra.
You skipped over it, but I think it's pertinent about the fact that when a man sells his daughter as a slave, the point about this part of the scripture is it talks about the fact that a man who clearly has a debt, which is why he's selling his daughter, sells his daughter because now that puts her in a safe position because she can't therefore be resold. Once she's in the master's household, her status has changed. She now is equal to the master's children. She either gets married to the master or she marries the son of the master, which makes her the daughter-in-law. It changes her status. She's no longer in that poverty level where her father was indebted, but now she's elevated her status. She is now either the master's wife or the master's daughter or the master's daughter-in-law. But the difference between a servant and a bondservant is also that it changes the status. That bondservant is now a part of that household. He's like equal to a son now, because he has this bond that has made him a shared member of the household. It changes his status. Mm-hmm. He was just a slave before. He was just a servant before. He was a person who had poverty, which is why he got himself into the slave situation in the first place. He could leave, now taking away the knowledge that he's learned while working for the master, and go off and do his own thing. But if he stays in the household of his master, and he's elevated in status in society.
When my ancestors first came here to North America from France, this is 1651. Possibly even before that, the girl was serving as an indentured servant to the higher echelons here in Quebec at the time. And she served him for a number of years. Then she was set free. She didn't have to marry and she didn't have to stay with him. But after she served him for so many years, she was set free to do what she wanted. So that was part of the French culture back in the early 1600s. Rose, go ahead.
Well, what I keep noticing and what I see in the chat, there are a lot of definitions that were posted in the chat. And it's that this is all about legalities. It's all legal language. It's court language that you put in legal documents. And the Torah is a covenant, another legal word. And as soon as we accept the Torah as our way of living, we accept that covenant. So we're in legal agreement with the Father in heaven, according to the Torah. And so I just think it's really interesting. And I don't think anybody's necessarily talked about that yet, but I always notice the legal language that's in Torah, and we are already accepted unto him as bondservants just by accepting his Torah.
Well, no, we haven't. No, we are called, we are servants, but
Right.
until we, so here's because you've led me right to where I'm trying to get to.
Well, 1 second, read what Shane put in Leviticus 25:39. And if your brother who lives besides you is become poor and is sold to you, you shall not compel him to serve as a bondservant. So it's a choice.
It's a
as well.
choice. Yes.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get to. It's a
Yes,
choice.
and that's where that comes in here. Yes.
We have been called. Each one of you has been called to this walk. You've embraced it. You've got excited about this is new. This is really cool. Look at all the stuff I'm learning. Awesome. Have you taken that step to nail your ear to the wall, to the doorpost? Have you committed to that? Because, and I don't take that lightly. Don't say, oh yeah, no, take it seriously. Because if you have, as we've just read, each of the epistles, a bondservant of Yeshua, they were willing to die for this. Now, if that's the case, are you willing to die for this walk, this way of life? We have had lots of people come here very proud, very, it's their way or the highway, or, you know. Are you willing to submit yourself unto death because you believe in this walk? And if you say yes, then do you also believe with your whole heart that he will raise you up from the grave? Therefore, you don't really have a fear of death. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that part myself, but I also know he's going to raise us up. And I know that's just 2033. It's not that far away. So each year I survive, it's kind of, okay, that's just less time I'm good. It's not that I've missed the last, 6,000 years, and I'm worried about missing the next 5. Come on. Are you ready? Have you got your brain in that position? And because that's what a bondservant is. I'm willing to die for my king, my master. Glenn.
Yeah, and your actions show that. If you're not walking rigidly in the instructions, are you committed? And the committing is a process too. So it may take 10 minutes, it may take a lifetime to decide to do that final choice. I'm willing to die for this. And
Yeah.
the only way you're going to know it is when you're faced with that final choice. Then you'll know.
Yeah, and I'm not praying that anyone gets faced with that. But what I'm trying to get you to come to understand is your independence, your the pride, the independence that is in you, I get to do whatever I want that's in you. Until you conquer that, until you conquer your pride, everything that you're doing here is just religious crap. It's all BS. But the moment that you no one's going to see it. No one's going to really know it, but you will when you transfer over to Jehovah, your life. Then you'll know. Then you'll see things happen. And that's it's a big deal. Paul said, I've been crucified with Jehovah. Okay, so anyway, I think that's the points I wanted to come up with that. We'll see how long I can stay quiet for the rest of this. But this is the significant thing about what we're reading here, understanding what a bondservant is. Okay, Kurt, back to you, sir.
Okay, there's
Where
one
are
thing
we?
we're in Exodus 20, verse 7.
21.
There's 21. There's one thing that we did not touch on in the bondservant thing. 1 Corinthians 6, verse 20. For you were bought at a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's.
Okay, but that's a paid for servant. It could be a redeemed servant.
Well, that's
but
us, right?
Well, yeah, that's us, but I would venture to say that's not a bond servant, because a bond servant has voluntarily given himself over. The other one is bought for and he's paid for. I own you. But then that bond servant, that servant is now got to say, you own me, but now I want to serve you.
Well, we fight with that, right?
Yeah.
I know that I was bought with Yeshua's blood, and my life is his, but the fleshly side of me wrestles with that, and there's a little bit of a war that happens once in a while when I fall short, but still it doesn't change the fact that I was bought and paid for.
Okay, shall we carry? Oh, Sarkis, go ahead, Sarkis.
And I like the way Kurt said. That's because we today, for the last 1800 years, we're preaching the gospel without understanding what the price was paid. We have half the gospel being preached and taught. So we think we're free, but we don't see it. We are bond. We are bond servant, because part of the deal is, if I confess Yeshua as Lord and Savior of my life, the word confess in Greek, it means covenant.
Yep.
And therefore part of the covenant is, okay, your life for my life, then I become your bond servant.
I'm going to disagree, because the bond servant is going to have to want to obey, not just I've been bought and paid for, like what Kirk just said. The distinction or the difference is, I want to serve you versus I have to do this.
No, there's a difference here. When you have a contract, you're willing to do it. It's not that I have to, because you're exchanging my freedom from sin to become part of your family, and part of your family, then I am willing
in covenant.
But that's the contract. You're serving the contract. Jacob did not nail his ear to the tent for Laban. He left. That's a servant. That's his right to leave. He was not a bond servant. A bond servant nails his ear to the tent, never leaves, and works for that master forever.
Well, let me ask you this. On the flip side, you can't be a bond servant if you disobey the instructions of the master.
That's not a question, that's a statement, and I agree.
Well, think about that, is what I mean. That's a question that you got to think about. That's a statement you got to think about.
Okay, Paul, you're going to have the last word. Then I got to get Kurt going. We got to get going here.
The statement that Jesus made, many are called, few are chosen.
Yes.
You just verified some of that statement by saying some choose to do the contract, but others choose to do the bonding.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree with that. Okay, Kurt.
Okay, before anybody else gets in there, I'll go. Okay, verse 7 of Exodus 21. And if a man sells his daughter to be a female slave, she shall not go out as the male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who has betrothed her to himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt deceitfully with her. And if he has betrothed her to his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. If he takes another wife, he shall not diminish her food, her clothing, and her marriage rights. And if he does not do these three for her, then she shall go out free without paying money. He who strikes a man so that he dies shall be surely put to death. However, if he did not lie in wait, but God delivered him into his hand, then I will appoint for you a place where he may flee. But if a man acts with predetermination against his neighbor to kill him by treachery, you shall take him from my altar that he may die. And he who strikes his father or mother shall surely be put to death. He who kidnaps a man and sells him, or if he is found in his hand, shall surely be put to death. And he who curses his father or mother shall surely be put to death. If men contend with each other, and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die, but is confined to his bed, if he rises again and walks about outside with his staff, then he who struck him shall be acquitted. He shall only pay for the loss of his time, and shall provide for him to be thoroughly healed. And if a man beats his male or female servant with a rod, so that he dies under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he remains alive a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his property. If men fight and hurt a woman with child, so that she gives birth prematurely, yet no harm follows, he shall surely be punished accordingly as the woman's husband imposes on him, and he shall pay as the judges determine. But if any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. And if a man strikes the eye of his male or female servant and destroys it, he shall let him go free for the sake of his eye. And if he knocks out the tooth of his male servant or female servant, he shall let him go free for the sake of this tooth. And if an ox gores a man or a woman to death, then the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten. But the owner of the ox shall be acquitted. But if the ox tended to thrust with its horn in times past, and it has been made known to its owner, and he has not kept it confined, so that it has killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall also be put to death. If there is imposed on him a sum of money, then he shall pay to redeem his life whatever is imposed on him, whether it has gored a son or gored a daughter. According to this judgment, it shall be done to him. If the ox gores a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. And if a man opens a pit, or if a man digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls in it, the owner of the pit shall make it good. He shall give money to their owner, but the dead animal shall be his. If one man's ox hurts another so that it dies, then they should sell the live ox and divide the money from it. From the dead ox they shall also divide. Or if it was known that the ox tended to thrust in times past, and its owner has not kept it confined, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead animal shall be his own.
Thank you, Kurt. So this ox for an ox thing, and I'm not trying to skip over everything else, but this ox for an ox thing, I also use that for if a dog is known to bite people. You take care of that dog. If it bites somebody or harms someone else, I'm going to beat the living tar out of you next time. And I've actually threatened a person's life for doing that before I got involved in Torah. No, that's not true. That was after Torah. No, it was all about the same time when I was just getting involved. I had a pit bull attack my wife who was pregnant and our dog, and they were both on our front yard. And I came home and I walked down there. I said, if I ever see that dog unleashed again, I will shoot it. I don't care if it's between your legs. I will shoot it. And if I miss and I hit you, that's just too bad. That's based on this law. You take care of if you know your animals are going to hurt somebody, you make sure they don't hurt anyone ever again. That's your responsibility as a human being. It doesn't matter if it's an ox, a horse. We had a horse that was known to kick. It would turn and kick you. It kicked my mom, knocked her 30 feet in the air. That horse was dead the next day. These are animals. These are not human beings. They are not equal to human beings. And I know in our society today, we have this love affair with animals. And Rose's chickens, if they ever hurt somebody, we cut their heads off. Sorry, Rose. But I'm just saying, ladies and gentlemen, understand the law. This is very serious. Okay. Does anyone else got any other comments on the eye for an eye, all this stuff? Shall we just move on to Isaiah? Sarkis, Rebecca. Okay, Sarkis, you're first.
No, let Rebecca go.
Okay, Rebecca, you're first.
This measure for measure from Jehovah is an awesome law because people will do more than that, like in anger and instead of eye for eye, somebody would
You mean out of control rage or vengeance?
Yeah, would kill somebody just for a smaller. So measure for measure is in God's providence to protect us. And then verse 33 in Exodus 21. When a man digs a pit and doesn't cover, and the neighbor's animal falls in it, the owner will pay for the neighbor's animal and keep the animal. Is like a parallel in the Garden of Eden. Jehovah puts the serpent in front of Adam and Eve, digs the pit, and Adam and Eve fell in it. And then Jehovah paid the price for Adam and Eve and keeps them, keeps the human race to himself.
Interesting. I had not looked at that scripture that way. I always looked at it because I did dig holes all the time in people's front yards all over the place. And we were in the habit of not covering them up. And once I understood this law, I made sure that those holes were covered up and fenced off and protected. And, we ended up downtown Toronto where there's 1 million people walking around who don't see plywood, who don't see snow fence, who don't see barricades. They just walk right into the pits. So yeah, this law became big for me, but I'd never seen it as Adam and Eve in the garden. Okay. Sarkis.
Yeah, verse 16, he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he found in his hand, he shall surely put to death. the consequences we've been dealing with, current culture today, in terms of racial and problems and all that, it's all related because the church said we don't have to keep Torah, and this is part of Torah. You do not buy or sell people who've been stolen, and make slave out of them. And so that the slavery issue is a big issue in our culture, especially in today we're experiencing that in the West. But this is something where we are willing to accept the gift of salvation, yet we're not willing to look at Torah and say, whoa, wait a minute, you're buying and selling people who've been stolen, and create another culture of slavery. And this is something we could use in evangelism. This is something we could use in bringing healing to our culture, and say a lot of people don't understand the gospel, and that's why, because they don't know the Torah. It's a tool to show the church as well as the world, yeah, the church made a mistake by not keeping Torah.
Yeah. Good point. Very good point. Okay, if there's no one else, and I'm a little bit anxious to get into the next section. Okay, Isaiah 24, here we go. Thank you.
That's me.
Shauna, go ahead, Shauna.
Behold, the Lord lays the earth waste, devastates it, distorts its surface, and scatters its inhabitants. And the people will be like the priest, the servant like his master, the maid like her mistress, the buyer like the seller, the lender like the borrower, and the creditor like the debtor. The earth will be completely laid waste, completely despoiled, for the Lord has spoken this word. The earth mourns and withers, the world fades and withers, the exalted of the people of the earth fade away. The earth is also polluted by its inhabitants, for they transgressed laws, violated statutes, broke the everlasting covenant.
Okay, let me jump in here for a second. As we're reading verses 5 and 6, I'm thinking of Abbotsford, BC. I'm thinking of Colorado. I'm thinking of the tornadoes that went through Kentucky here, at the end of November. I'm thinking of all these things that are happening right now. And I'm saying this, as we read this, don't look at this as some Old Testament, ancient history book. This is talking about you right now, today, witnessing these things going on around you. The earth is puking out its inhabitants. Okay, Shauna?
Therefore, a curse devours the earth, and those who live in it are held guilty. Therefore, the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men are left. The new wine mourns, the vine decays, all the merry-hearted sigh. The gaiety of tambourines ceases, the noise of revelers stops, the gaiety of the harp ceases. They do not drink wine with song. Strong drink is bitter to those who drink it. The city of chaos is broken down. Every house is shut up so that none may enter. There is an outcry in the streets concerning the wine. All joy turns to gloom.
Just let me interrupt you again.
Mm-hmm.
So if you watch the news today, you see New Year's celebrations going off around the world with nobody watching them. The Times Square is closed, the Red Square is closed, but they're putting it on the news, and you all have to be back home by 10 o'clock because of curfews in, where's that, England or Europe? And I'm just reading these verses last night, and I'm thinking, this is going on right now. So I wanted to point that out. Okay, carry on, Shona. I'm going to probably interrupt you a couple more times here, I think.
Feel free, Joe. There is an outcry in the streets concerning the wine. All joy turns to gloom. The gaiety of the earth is banished. Desolation is left in the city, and the gate is battered to ruins. For thus it will be in the midst of the earth among the peoples, as the shaking of an olive tree, as the gleanings when the grape harvest is over. They raise their voices, they shout for joy. They cry out from the west concerning the majesty of the Lord. Therefore glorify the Lord in the east, the name of the Lord, the God of Israel in the coastlands of the sea. From the ends of the earth we hear songs, glory to the righteous one. But I say, woe is me, alas for me. The treacherous deal treacherously, and the treacherous deal very treacherously. Terror and pit and snare confront you, O inhabitant of the earth. Then it will be that he who flees the report of disaster will fall into the pit, and he who climbs out of the pit will be caught in the snare. For the windows above are opened, and the foundations of the earth shake. The earth is broken asunder, the earth is split through, the earth is violently shaken. The earth reels to and fro like a drunkard, and it totters like a shack, for its transgression is heavy upon it, and it will fall, never to rise again. So it will happen in that day that the Lord will punish the host of heaven on high and the kings of the earth on earth, and they will be gathered together like prisoners in the dungeon, and will be confined in prison, and after many days they will be punished. Then the moon will be abashed and the sun ashamed, for the Lord of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and his glory will be before his elders. Going on to chapter 25.
No, hang on. Nobody's got their hands up. Do I do this? Okay, the verse 18. Verse 18.
Not the party, the potty. I was thinking about how there's no.
And it shall be that he who flees from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. Does that make sense to you? It didn't make sense to me, so I went and looked it up in the Hebrew. And what I'm encouraging you to do when you read something, especially in Isaiah, when you read something in Isaiah that just doesn't sound right, go back to the Hebrew and let's see what the alternative words are or alternative meanings are for that word or those words.
Can I read it in my version that you don't like?
Yes, let me hear the version that I don't like.
Okay. He who flees at the report of the terror shall fall into the pit, and he who climbs out of the pit shall be caught in the trap. For sluices are opened on high, and the earth's foundations tremble.
So, what are sluices?
Well, if you're talking about a dam, a sluice lets water out. So
it could be the overflow of water from a dam or the overflow. It's like a channel of water rushing down here or there, right? Randy?
I think the verse 6 where it says, therefore a curse shall consume the earth. Those dwelled in it, the earth shall be burned. I think that's Zechariah 5 talking right there. That's the curse of Zechariah 5 talking. So what can make the earth actually drunk and sway? It has to be nuclear explosions of magnitude throughout the earth, burning these rebellious people that Jehovah has been trying year after year, day after day to get their attention, and he just wouldn't do it. So
you said Zechariah 5, did you?
Zechariah 5, yes,
Yeah.
We're talking about the flying scrolls.
Yeah.
That's the curse that's coming on the earth.
I don't think it has to be just a nuclear war. I think if we got hit by a meteor, it might rock us to and fro as well.
Yeah, Adolphus is going to miss us. So, and that movie that I showed you in the newsletter, that was just because of Adolphus was supposed to get very close to Earth. Now it's getting a little further away. But here's what I'm looking at here in verse 18. That he who flees from the noise of the fear. Well, I looked up the word noise. Let me just do that. Share screen. Have I got it here? Yeah. Okay. Kirk's probably racing to get there before me. Nope. Did I share the screen? You guys don't see that yet, do you?
Not yet.
Sorry. No, where are you? Esword, unknown. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
24. Verse 18. Oh, what happened?
Just lost you.
Just lost me. I lost Esword. Where'd Esword go? Okay, let's try this again. You see me now?
Yes.
Okay, 24:18, and the noise. Okay, so the noise of the fear, that just sounded weird to me, so I looked it up, and the second word is the one I want, and I go down here to noise. Where's noise? Noise. Well, it's down here. There it is. Brown's River Briggs. Voice, sound, noise. It's the coal. Okay, goes down to Strong's. It's the coal. From an unused root meaning to call aloud, a voice or sound. Aloud, bleating, crackling, cry. Proclamation, sing sound, spark, thunder, voice, yell. That doesn't sound like noise. Okay. So coal, voice is Kaf Vav Lamed. Kaf Vav Lamed. The call of the shepherd to the sheep who knew him by sound. When it came time to move, he would call them and they would quickly gather to him. From the noise. So, and he shall come to pass that he who fleeth from the voice of the fear of what? I'm now I'm reading into it, the fear of Jehovah, fall into the pit. That voice is first used in Genesis 3 verse 8, where the voice, let's go there, Genesis 3 verse 8. And they heard the voice of the Lord walking in the garden. Was the voice walking in the garden? Jehovah is walking in the garden, but they heard his voice. It's the same word. So that was my thing there. And then that voice, because over and over and over again, and I got somebody mad at me on one of the discussions I'm in. Oh, I said, it's not Satan who's sending these curses. It's Jehovah. It's Jehovah who sent the fires to Colorado. It's Jehovah who sent the flood to Abbotsford. It's Jehovah who sent the fires to Lytton. It's Jehovah that burnt up Pasadena. It's Jehovah who's cursing the earth because we're not obeying him, which is what we're reading here in Isaiah 24. And we're fleeing from his voice and falling into these pits. It's Jehovah that sent COVID. It's Jehovah. It's Jehovah. It's Jehovah. And once you recognize that, then everything else starts to make more sense. Is Jehovah evil? Jehovah says, I create evil and good. It's Jehovah. What else I got here? Okay, I'm going to skip through. There's a lot of stuff in here. If you look up the Hebrew in this stuff, you can learn a lot of different things much better. And Isaiah is one of those chapters I love. I just love all of Isaiah, but you got to go back and read it in the Hebrew because some of the stuff is just not quite interpreted right. Randy, you had your hand up.
Verse 16, where it says, from the ends of the earth, we hear songs. So where's this place that is saying splendor to the righteous one? While somebody else, other side of the world or somewhere else is saying, I waste away. I waste away. Woe is me. What's going on there?
Yeah, I was going to skip that, but now that you brought it up, who is it that's saying, it's us. Look at all the destruction going on in North America. They blame it on climate change. Woe is me. It's not climate change. It's Jehovah has taken away his fence of protection. The suzerain, suzerain master is saying, you don't want my protection? Okay, here's what it's going to be like without me. You don't want my blessings? Okay, here's what the curses look like. But on the other side of the world, in the corner of the earth, there is a group of people today who are singing their hearts out, and they haven't had the history of being blessed by Jehovah that we have. We look at me, I'm fat, and look at half of you, you're all fat. You've been blessed. You've had the cream of the crop. You've had the fatness of the earth. And I'm speaking not just to you as individuals, I'm speaking now as a nation. Look at our nation. We're the fattest people on earth. And we don't recognize Jehovah. Hey, we're just going to rebuild all these houses here next week. Our insurance is going to pay for it. Yada, yada, yada. Hey, we're just going to rebuild. We just got to build a dam here and we'll transfer that water up and we'll get Abbotsford back on its feet. It's going to take a couple months, but we'll get it done. Nobody's repenting. Nobody. The typhoon goes through the Philippines here last month. They are all praying, the entire nation, from the president of the nation down to the people in the path of the typhoon. They are praying. They still got Jesus and Joseph as statues in their homes. They don't understand that part yet, a lot of them. But we need prophets to go and teach them. So, yeah. Randy, did I leave anything out of that, or do you want to throw more in on that? More gas on the fire?
Nope, sounds good.
Susa, go ahead.
So in verse 17 in the Hebrew, there's a connection between all three of those, the fear, the pit, and the snare. It's pakad, vepachat, and pach. You can also hear it in Hebrew. So, they're all interconnected. They're all coming from the same source. So to fall into one is like to fall into the other. I think they're all interconnected. And then in verse 18, I had to look up.
Before you move on, just let me say that when you, in my King James Version, this is like a song or poetry or poetic language here. So yes, the rhymes of those three words would fit together somehow and be used poetically in this song that Isaiah is singing or speaking. Okay, go on, Suzanne.
The other question I have is in the next verse 18. I looked it up in the Hebrew. It says from heavens, the windows of heaven. But I looked it up because I thought, what kind of heaven is that? It's not Hashemayim like we're used to. It's Mimarod. And so I looked it up. That's the heights, which makes me wonder, and I'm really going off on a limb. I'm just throwing it out here. when we move out of the way, when we get ourselves wrongly aligned, we open the doors to the enemy. And that's what I think this is doing. And then I'm not saying that we've been saying that Jehovah is sending this, but it's a legal thing that these principalities in the heights are taking advantage of. I'm wondering. Kind of a different perspective maybe on what's happening.
So you're saying the enemies are?
No, I'm asking that question. Instead of it using Hashemayim, it's using Mimarom. So it's the heights.
For the windows from on high. So I have on high here. I didn't have heavens.
So mine says the sluices are open on high. I'm reading from JPS, the Jewish Publication Society.
Does that?
And I'm thinking this.
No, hang on, somebody. The Susa did that on high. Is that what your translation is saying, and not heavens? Is that what you just said?
Well, I'm using Bible Hub, at least for that one. From on high, it says from heavens in the different translation, but
okay.
But I guess it gives me a picture of the fact that through all the level of sin that's gone up, the cup gets filled, right? And we've reached that place where now legally the principalities and powers are really able to legally come through and bring these things upon us. It's just a question I'm asking.
They're allowed to.
Yeah, we have legally gotten ourselves in the place where now we're vulnerable.
Because Jehovah holds it back. He's the restrainer.
Yeah.
And he's letting it go now because we've decided we don't need him anymore. And it is a choice. So he says, okay, we're going to leave you up to your own devices. And here you go. And this is why, and I know this is not part of your talk, Joe, but this is why I have and we know it's all coming from Jehovah, but there's Satan's wrath and there's God's wrath. And I see two types of wrath. And right now, Jehovah's allowing, maybe not right now, but soon to be, tribulation, which is Satan's wrath.
I would say the wrath on Satan. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, because Satan, if Satan is allowed to continue, no flesh will be saved alive. I think that's where you're going.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, Sombra, I cut you off before.
No, that's okay. I was just thinking of if I was sitting in a boat alongside the dam and the sluice open, there would be no way to stay inside, the body of water that's on the side of the dam. You just get poured out, and if from on high, there's like just this immense dropping down. There's no control.
Well, isn't that what we saw in Abbotsford? It's what they call that an atmospheric river, all of a sudden let loose, and the rivers normally handle it could not handle it, but the forest fires had wiped out all the ground cover, which would suck up a lot of that water. They couldn't do it. And Abbotsford got this deluge on them. So yeah, I see that as opening up the sluices of heavens, or sluices on high. And the fact that they're calling it atmospheric rivers now, I thought, wow, where are they getting these terms? So Sarkis. And then after Sarkis, we're going to go to chapter 25. And I've been, just so y'all know, I've been waiting 4 or 5 years to get to chapter 25, just so we can talk about it. So I'm excited today. Sorry, Sarkis, go ahead.
No, I'll keep it short. It's a good description related to the book of Revelation. But before I don't want to go there in as much as looking at verse 18. And it says, and it shall come to pass that he fleeth from the noise of the fear shall fall into the pit. And he that cometh out of the midst of the pit. This is, there's a description, something coming out of the pit, shall be taken into the snare. For the windows from on high, the word high, you could say high places, and are open, and the foundations of the earth do shake. And it's like the enemy, when he was in prison and he's not coming out of the pit. The description of it is similar to what we see in Revelation. And
yeah, but I think the one in Revelation is talking about Satan coming out of. I don't.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying part of that description is when we're being given away to fear, and the pit and the fear from Jehovah, but we're being put into the hands of the enemy. Because why? Because we are at the high places. When we're at high places, the enemy is in control, and destruction being used by Jehovah to destroy the people.
Okay.
And people are not recognizing destruction is coming from the enemy who steals, kills, and destroys. That's all he does.
Yeah. And I would say that he does that by getting you to not believe in Torah and bringing Jehovah's anger on you.
Yep.
Okay. Let's okay, Isaiah 25.
That's me again.
Okay, Patty.
Can I quickly jump in here,
Yep.
please? I like what it says in 24, Isaiah 24, verse 21 and 22. That fits right in with Psalm 149. The exalted ones on the earth, the kings of the earth, they'll be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit. They'll be shut up in the prison, and many days they'll be punished. These guys are gonna pay, right? The guys who perpetrated all these crimes against humanity, let's say, there's a price to be paid. They're gonna
And
pay.
the verse 23 tells you this is going to happen because the Lord of hosts is going to reign on high, so it's coming. It's getting close to that time.
It's coming. It's coming. Patience.
Okay. Shauna.
Isaiah 25. O Lord, thou art my God. I will exalt thee. I will give thanks to thy name, for thou hast worked wonders, plans formed long ago with perfect faithfulness. For thou hast made a city into a heap, a fortified city into a ruin. A palace of strangers is a city no more. It will never be rebuilt. Therefore, a strong people will glorify thee. Cities of ruthless nations will revere thee. For thou hast been a defense for the helpless, a defense for the needy in his distress, a refuge from the storm, a shade from the heat. For the breath of the ruthless is like a rainstorm against a wall. Like heat in drought, thou dost subdue the uproar of aliens. Like heat by the shadow of a cloud, the song of the ruthless is silenced. And the Lord of hosts will prepare a lavish banquet for all peoples on this mountain, a banquet of aged wine, choice pieces with marrow, and refined aged wine. And on this mountain he will swallow up the covering which is over all peoples, even the veil which is stretched over all nations. He will swallow up death. Whoops, sorry guys, for all time. Scott, can you take over? And the Lord God will.
Yeah. And the Lord God will wipe tears away from all faces, and he will remove the reproach of his people from all the earth, for the Lord has spoken. And it will be said in that day, behold, this is our God, for whom we have waited, that he might save us. This is the Lord for whom we have waited. Let us rejoice and be glad in his salvation. For the hand of the Lord will rest on this mountain, and Moab will be trodden down in his place, as straw is trodden down in the water of a manure pile. And he will spread out his hands in the middle of it, as a swimmer spreads out his hands to swim. But the Lord will lay low his pride together with the trickery of his hands, and the unassailable fortifications of your walls he will bring down, lay low and cast to the ground, even to the dust.
Thank you, Scott and Shauna. And I understand, well, Shauna's tearing up here. I have in big letters on verses 6 and 7, the Feast of Sukkot. And on verse 8, I have the 8th day. Do you all understand why I do that? Why I've got them written there? And in this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of choice. When does he do that? A feast of choice pieces. That's not Passover. That's not Shavuot. It's not the Feast of Trumpets. It's definitely not Atonement. A feast of choice pieces, a feast of wine on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, or well-refined wines on the lees, and he will destroy on this mountain the surface of the covering cast over the people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. So he's going to remove their veil so they can see, so they can understand. He will swallow up death forever. When does that take place? At the end of the 7th millennium. And the Lord will wipe away tears from all faces. Why? Because everyone's going to be brought back up alive at that time. So we just wrote the book, The Mystery of the Jewish Rapture. We talk about the Feast of Passover, and we talk about the Feast of Shavuot. And I purposely left out this part, the 7th millennium, because I had to undo the heaven and hell stuff. I have to explain these other holy days in great detail. That would have taken another 200 pages. The whole entire plan of salvation is explained in the holy days. Scott and Shauna, they just lost Scott's mom and dad, or dad and then mom, within a week. I'm dealing with my mom, and I'm watching her go. And then the other day she's back here, she's like she was when I was a kid. And it's hard. And there's many times I leave my mom and I cry. Sometimes I say my mom's gone. And then this past week, my mom's here again. So we're going back and forth all the time. But I know that day's coming. But I also know that everyone who's believer, who believes, who's obeying, who's a bond servant of the Messiah, will be raised up again, from the apostles down to our day today, on Shavuot 2033. I know that. If I'm wrong about Shavuot 2033, then it's going to take place on Shavuot sometime between now and 2045. Because those people have to be brought back for the 7th millennium. Now, if those relatives of ours and everyone who's not been believers, they will be raised up at the end of the 7th millennium. That's when death is going to be, there'll be no more death after that. So from the start of the 8th millennium forever, Jehovah is going to reign with us, and there's going to be peace, and there's going to be no more death. And he created man not to die. Adam and Eve was not supposed to die. But death started with them when they sinned. So that's why I put in the side with certain verses about certain holy days, and that's what they mean. Anyone else got any comments on chapter 25? there's one really special verse here for me. It's a big verse.
Is it verse 9?
No,
That's the one I like it just because it says his name. This is Jehovah, your Elohim, the one we've waited for, not this one who comes in and gives them another name saying you don't have to do anything, because it was never said. This God, his name is Jehovah.
and it will be said in that day, behold, this is our God. Is that Jehovah there, or is that God there? What's the word there in Hebrew?
See, this is our Elohim.
Our
We have
Elohim.
waited for him. We have waited for him, and he
And he will
saves
save
us.
us. This is Jehovah.
But it says Ze Yehovah.
It's
Ze
what?
Yehovah. Ze Yehovah in the fourth line.
Capital L-O-R-D in the New King James.
What's Zay? What's a Zay mean?
I
This.
think this.
We will be glad and rejoice in his Yeshua.
Amen.
Yep, Yeshua is the last word in this, in the
Yeah.
Be Yeshua T, Yeshua To.
Okay. Now, the part that I get excited about is verse 12. Verse 12. And the fortress of the high fort of your walls, he will bring down, lay low, and bring to the ground, down to the dust. What does that mean? I get excited because I show this on tour in Israel every time I'm there. Okay, we're going to jump ahead here, and we're going to read verse 5 of chapter 26.
Is that Fort Antonio, Joe?
No, it's not Fort Antonio. For he brings down those who dwell on high, the lofty city. He lays it low. He lays it low to the ground. He brings it down to the dust. And then I'm going to jump over to chapter 29. Where am I going in chapter 29?
That's the Akra.
So I forget where I'm going in chapter 29. So we'll just leave that for a moment and I'll come back to it. And let me see, I'm going to put something up here. And we have a special presentation for you being presented by Rose today. Let me see, what am I looking for? I'm looking for that. So cue that up. Okay, now we're going to go to share. Let's hopefully this will come up. Yes, there you are. Share. Okay, Sombra, I see you. You see that? Okay, can I move that? Oh, yes. Can you, does it move for you? Okay, awesome. Rose, would you like to read what, now I've asked Rose to read this for you so I can, and I'm going to interrupt her as she does. This is a little bit lengthy, but this is really, I think, I don't know why I think this is so important. I don't know why, but I do. And maybe I'm crazy, but I just do. So I've gathered this together. When I got to this, I thought we were going to do this for chapter 29, but it actually begins in chapter 25:12, 26:5, and then 29. And Rose is going to read it for me. And if she could do that, and I'll interrupt her as we go. So first of all, I'm going to interrupt her before she even starts. So first of all, can you see my mouse? Do you see my mouse here? I don't know how to draw here, so I'm sorry. But this is the Kidron Valley. The Gehenna Valley. The Gehenna Valley. And I walk people up here, and you see here where the road turns? This is where it turns, and it starts going up. Oops, it goes up here, up past here, and it comes all the way over to, see this apartment building? That's near the Jaffa Gate. It's actually a little bit further over. It's probably over here. So this is where the Jaffa Gate is, over here where my mouse is. And that's the start of the Gehenna Valley. The Gehenna Valley is where they used to throw the refuse or the garbage that would burn and not stop. And the Gehenna Valley is where we get our word Hades or hell from. So this is the Gehenna Valley all the way up there or on the other side of the, on the other side of this mountain. This building at the top is Mount Zion, what they call Mount Zion today. And right here is Zion Gate. Over here is the Dung Gate, where it's right up here, right there, the Dung Gate. Here's the Western Wall over here, the Western Wall courtyard. So let me see, I'll get rid of that. Right, you see this little, this is a minaret. You see here where the mouse is? Okay, that's the minaret. That is where you walk out of the Hezekiah's tunnel. Okay, down here, this green area right here is where the pool of Siloam is. This is where they came to get the waters to bring up to the temple. Okay, so on the 7th great day, when they're bringing the waters up, Yeshua said, out of my water belly shall flow rivers of living water. That's where they come from down here. So I want to try to get on the other side of this tree to show you what I'm about to show you, but I couldn't. And this is the best place I could get my pictures from. If I go on the other side of the tree, all I see is buildings. So I'd like to cut that tree down, but I can't. Okay, Rose, please start. I think this is so cool.
All right. Isaiah 29:1, the temple city of David destroyed, from BibleStudying.net. The hill of the temple was a daughter hill to the hill of Zion. Earlier, we noted Josephus' statement that the temple was adjoining the fortress of the hill of Akra. He also stated that the temple was located on a hill that was over against the hill of Zion, Akra.
Okay, so
Similarly,
let me interrupt you. So she's talking about 3 hills. So she's reading Ernest Martin. Ernest Martin, I think, has got some great teachings. He's got some others that aren't so great, but he's got a lot of great teachings. So she's talking about 3 hills. So the hill of Zion, whoops, is will be over here. Okay. I think maybe I got this back one. The Akra, whoops, is going to be over here. And this whole area is going to be the Akra. So this is actually quite large. Okay. Now, and just for reference sake, this building, right underneath, I'll move my mouse so this will get out of the way, but underneath where this arrow is the Gihon Spring. And it is right there where my mouse is. That's the Gihon Spring. And this is the building you go into to get down to it. So that's your reference point. The Akra, I forgot what's the one, the Mount Zion, or the temple's built on top of the other one. Starts with an A. I can't think of it. She'll say it in a minute.
Ophel.
Say again?
The Ophel.
The Ophel. The Ophel starts with an A. Oh, Ophel. Thank you, Rebecca. And then this is the fortress. This is not, so we get the fortress mixed up. There's 2 fortresses involved here. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we can, how far we get here. Keep going, Rose.
similarly, First Maccabees stated that the fortress at the top of Zion, Akra, hill was very near to the temple. To these facts, we can add another. These historical descriptions inform us that the peak where the temple stood was lower than the peak on which stood the fortress of Zion Hill. In his writing, Josephus states that originally the temple was lower in elevation than the peak of Zion Hill. He then explains that the Hasmoneans demolished both the fortress and the hill of Akra, Zion, so that it would be lower in height than the temple.
Okay, so let me interrupt you. So this building here will be the corner of the temple. It is the southeast corner. Oh, who did that? Robert's iPhone, whoever, Robert, that's perfect. How did you do that on there? How did you get that on my screen? Awesome. Anyway, that's the southeast corner. So the temple goes back and it goes up to the north this way. And this whole area is going to be the temple area. Okay. This part down here. Okay, Robert, if you can take those squiggles off, that'd be great. I don't know how you're doing that, but this point down here from where my mouse is going to go up like this and over and back down over here. So what you're looking at here is empty space now, but this was the mountain, this was the Akra that they're talking about here. So you have to imagine this Akra being here. Okay, you can't see it now. Up here, this is Caiaphas's house right here. Do you see that, Kurt? I see you. Okay, so that's Caiaphas's house. That's, if in Israel, they always say if it ain't here, it's near. Well, this one, they don't say that. They say this is Caiaphas' house. Caiaphas used to come out of his house and be able to look into the courtyard of the temple. So he had to be able to look down here and see into the courtyard. And at the same time, these other hills that were higher, and this one was higher. And if you'll notice that every one of the footprints, these giant footprints in Judah, there are 7 of them. Jerusalem is another the city of David is another footprint. And at every footprint, the people used to be able to sit up high to look at all the sacrifices being done inside the temple. So they could sit up here and watch, they could sit up here and watch all the goings on inside the temple. Okay. Let's see what else we'll go back over here because this, and again, what Rose is talking about here now is an imaginary mountain that's no longer there, that used to sit right here where my mouse is going back and forth. Okay, Rose.
Joe, before you go on with Rose, tell them why the mountain isn't there anymore.
That's what Rose is going to tell you.
Oh, okay.
But the other hill, which was called Akra and sustains the lower city, is of the shape of a moon when she is horned. Over against this, there was a third hill, but naturally lower than Akra, and parted formerly from the other by a broad valley. However, in those times when the Asamoneans reigned, they filled up that valley with earth and had a mind to join the city to the temple.
Okay,
then
so
they took
hang on. What she's talking about here, the valley that they were going to fill up with earth is right here. This is the valley that they filled up with earth. Okay. This is the city that they were going to join to the temple. There's a Milo, which King David filled in, or King David restored. The Milo went across the city here. Solomon filled in the Milo to build the temple on. So this is the Milo in this area. This could be the valley she's about to read about, but I believe it's this valley up here. Okay, carry on, Rose.
Then they took off part of the height of Akra and reduced it to be of less elevation than it was before, that the temple might be superior to it. Josephus, Wars of the Jews, Book 5, Chapter 4, the description of Jerusalem, paragraph 1. Isaiah 29 also mentions the demolition of the fortress of Zion atop the summit of Zion Hill. Isaiah states that the city of David would be brought down and out of the ground. Isaiah 29:1.
So
Woe
just
to
what she's about to read here. Now, right where my bar is, so I'll move my all across here. You'll see this white stone. That's bedrock. So that bedrock is the very foundations of the earth. And that goes all the way around over here behind this tree, which is where I take people and I sit in the seat of Huda. I may not be, but I believe it is. And I sit there and I give them this lesson. I show them this, that they are standing on the very bedrock of Isaiah 25, 26, and 29. Okay, Rose.
Isaiah 29:1. Woe to Ariel, the city where David dwelt. Add ye year to year, let them kill sacrifices. Yet I will distress Ariel, and there shall be heaviness and sorrow, and it shall be unto me as Ariel. And I will camp against thee round about, and will lay siege against thee with a mount, and I will raise forts against thee, and thou shalt be brought down, and shalt speak out of the ground, and thy speech shall be low out of the dust, and thy voice shall be as of one that hath a familiar spirit out of the ground, and thy speech shall whisper out of the dust. Elsewhere in his writings, Josephus provides additional detail to this historic development that was begun by Simon Maccabeus. In the quote below, Josephus describes how Simon cast down the stronghold, citadel of Jerusalem, and demolished the hill on which it sat to the ground.
Okay, so let me interrupt you. Remember that the Syrians captured the citadel and they would shoot arrows into the temple while they were performing the sacrifices. The Jews recaptured the temple, but they did not recapture the Akra. So this is what's going on. This Akra is higher. It's fortified. King David fortified it. It's also the city that Shem dwelt in, Salem, Melchizedek. And it was a fort. So this is where the Syrians were. And this is the problem that they're talking about now. How do we keep this from happening to us again? How do we keep from being shot at from our own city while we perform the duties of the temple? Okay, Rose.
This arduous task took 3 years of hard labor, but the result was that Zion Hill was made into a low-lying area, and the temple was superior to it in elevation. 7. But Simon, who was made high priest by the multitude on the very first year of his high priesthood, set his people free from their slavery under the Macedonians, and permitted them to pay tribute to them no longer, which liberty and freedom from tribute they obtained after 170 years, 14, of the kingdom of the Assyrians, which was after Seleucus, who was called Nicator, got the dominion over Syria. Now the affection of the multitude towards Simon was so great that in their contracts one with another and in their public records they wrote, in the first year of Simon the benefactor and the ethnarch of the Jews, for under him they were very happy and overcame the enemies that were round about them. For Simon overthrew the city Gazara and Joppa and Jamhis. He also took the citadel of Jerusalem by siege and cast it down to the ground, that it might not be any more a place of refuge to their enemies when they took it, to do them a mischief, as it had been till now. And when he had done this, he thought it their best way, and most for their advantage, to level the very mountain itself upon which the citadel happened to stand, that so the temple might be higher than it. And indeed, when he had called the multitude to an assembly, he persuaded them to have it so demolished, and this by putting them in mind what miseries they had suffered by its garrison and the Jewish deserters, and what miseries they might hereafter suffer in case any foreigner should obtain the kingdom, and put a garrison into that citadel. This speech induced the multitude to a compliance, because he exhorted them to do nothing but what was for their own good. So they all set themselves to the work, and leveled the mountain, and in that work they spent both day and night without any intermission, which cost them 3 whole years before it was removed, and brought to an entire level with the plain of the rest of the city. After which the temple was the highest of all the buildings. Now the citadel, as well as the mountain whereupon it stood, were demolished. And these actions were thus performed under Simon. Josephus, Antiquities, Book 13, Chapter 6.
So let me also interrupt you again. So what Rose just talked about is this area here, this mountain right here being demolished down to the very foundation, taking 3 years to do. All the dirt from this mountain they took and they put up here in what used to be called the lower city. And they filled the lower city until it became the upper city. And the upper city, which was here, became the lower city. One other thing that I didn't show you, these cars here going up this road, right here where this bus is, this is what they call the cheese, the Valley of the Cheese Makers, right? That is that valley there that goes up on the other side here, which you can't really tell. Okay. And what was the other thing I was going to show you? Right here, this building here, that is the City of David Center where you buy your tickets to go down to Hezekiah's Tunnel. That's the platform right here, this area. This wall is the wall that they've identified as the wall that Jeremiah restored for the temple. Okay, if Jeremiah is restoring this wall for the temple, and it says so right on the plaque right here, if that's the wall for the temple, what's this thing up here? Now, right here, this wall here is a wall, the new wall they put in so they can excavate the parking lot. I used to park my car here to go into the City of David. Now it's all excavated and all the things from the temple are being found there. They think it's Solomon's palace, but they're not sure what it is. They're beautiful walls. And there's other things being found here from the Simon, not Simon, the 164 to 130, 142, who we just talked about, the Maccabees, I'm sorry, the Maccabees. They've got certain buildings that they're finding in here, but this is the temple. So what I was going to say was, from the Alaska Mosque right here, I've taken altimeter readings and I compared them to the Caiaphas's house right here. They're the same altimeter readings. And the place where I'm taking this picture from is the same altimeter readings. And what they told me was that the temple, which is where this building is now, was at the same level, which is be up to about this height. Okay. So if the temple, because the temple was 420 or 42 apartment building, the height of a 42 apartment building, 42 floors high, which brought it up to about where my mouse is here. Okay. That's how high we're talking about. So this Akra was even higher. So if my 42 stories is the same as the Alaska Mosque and the same as the Caiaphas house, it's about the same level. So it brings it up to about here, 42 stories tall. Okay, like, man, I would love to be able to draw that in here one day and just show, so you could see what it used to look like. But where my mouse is about 42 stories tall, 42 stories from the Kidron Valley, which is this valley down here. Actually, that white building right here, the white building is at the bottom of the Kidron Valley, and the temple went 150 feet into the Kidron Valley, below the Kidron Valley. And Emperor Hadrian took all the garbage and covered up all this stuff with the garbage from the city. Okay, so
Are they gonna restore it to its original elevation when they go and build it?
Well, they don't even know it's there yet, or at least they have not acknowledged it. They still believe the Temple Mount is where the temple was.
Okay.
But they're doing a lot of excavations in here, and they're working their way down this way. They're right over to the City of David, They found Isaiah's ring right in here, other temple artifacts in here, but they haven't yet figured it out. So if this temple is here and Nehemiah restored the wall of the temple right here, they got to be getting close. The Gihon spring was in the corner of the temple. Okay, so again, keep imagining all this stuff as Rose reads the rest. This is Josephus talking about the, and Josephus was what, 150 years, 200 years after the Maccabees? So he knows. 200 years ago in Canada, we know the history. 200 years ago in the US, we know the history. So he knows. Okay, Rose.
Akra. The Akra was a fortress or citadel built in Jerusalem by Antiochus Epiphanes, ruler of the Seleucid Empire, after his conquest of the city in 168 BCE. According to Josephus, it stood on a hill higher than the temple and was garrisoned by Greek soldiers. The first stage of the liberation of Jerusalem by the Maccabees in 164 BC was incomplete, as they gained possession of the city and the temple, but the Hellenistic garrison and local supporters of the Seleucids held out in the Akra for a considerable time. It withstood the efforts of both Judas and Jonathan Maccabeus to subjugate it, eventually yielding to Simon Maccabeus in 141 BC. After reduction of the fortress, the Maccabees demolished the Akra and leveled the hill in which it had stood.
Okay,
Wikipedia.
so just catch the dates there. 164 BC, the Maccabees take possession of the temple. But the Akra was not until 140, what'd you say, 142?
141.
141. So for 20 years, this Akra is a sore spot to them. They're being shot at by these Syrians for 20 years. Okay.
So after the Hasmonean undertaking, the hill called Akra, Zion, was lower than the side of the temple. However, before this, the hill called Akra, Zion, was higher than the side of the temple. This means that the temple site was lower in elevation than the former fortress on the peak of Zion Hill. Tuvia Sagiv explains these facts in his presentation. One of the problems of Jerusalem for the archaeologist, where is the Akra or Akra fortress? The Antonia was from the Roman period. The Akra was from the Greek period. The second
Fort Antonio. Okay, so there's the Alaska Mosque. There's the Dome of the Rock. Fort Antonio is that little place over here. Okay, and it's about the size of. It was a little bit bigger than my house. That's where they're saying they put 5,000 Roman soldiers in the space of my house. Now, when we have 20 people over for a party, it was full. They're talking 5. So this is absolutely stupidity. But people believe it because they're told to. When you're there, when you walk it, you shake your head. How could I have been so stupid? Okay, carry on, Rose.
The Akra was from the Greek period, the 2nd century before Christus. And according to Josephus Flavius, the Akra was in the south. And in the period of Shimon the Hasmonean, he decided to destroy this fortress, not only the fortress, but also the hill on which the fortress stood. It took him 3 years to destroy this hill. Now let us see what happens. Let us try and see the area in the Hasmonean period. We say that here is the Antonia fortress, one hill. Here is the Jewish temple. And here is another small hill, the Akra. The section of it will be like this. It means here is the dome, the rock of the Dome of the Rock. Here is the temple. Here is the Akra, which was cut in the period of Shimon Hasmonean, which means that the temple was between the two shoulders. I'm going back to the Jewish sources, and in one of them it's written, At first, they had decided to put the temple on the highest point, and then they changed their mind and lowered the level of the temple, so the temple will be between two shoulders. Here we can see the temple according to Josephus Flavius in the period of the Hasmoneans. Nobody paid attention to this text, and therefore it caused them a lot of problems. Tuvia Sugiv, 1995, The Coming Temple. In the following quote, Sugiv continues to discuss the historical fact that the Temple Hill was lower than the fortress of Akra Hill and the Antonia Fortress. In the quote above, Sugiv explained that many scholars have not paid attention to these historical facts. Below, Sugiv notes that Dan Bahat is among those who have failed to take these reports into account. You know, one of the main problems Dan Bahat has spoken about was the place of the Akra, which was a fortress in the south. Here, when we arrange the areas I've spoken with you now, this is the place of the Antonia. This is the place of the temple. And here in the south was the Akra, which means, against what Dan Bahat said in the morning, the temple was not in the highest place. It was between two small mountains. In a higher place, according to David's city, but in between two small hills. This hill was destroyed by the Hasmoneans, and now we can see as it was before the Hasmoneans. It means the temple was in between. And indeed, it's very interesting that in our sources, in the Jewish sources, in the Talmud, it's written, and now I will translate it from Hebrew, that at first they thought to build the temple on the highest point, and they had decided to lower it in order that the temple will be between two shoulders. Between the two shoulders is the temple, and this is exactly what you see. Here one here, this is the Akra, this is the Dome of the Rock of the Dome of the Rock. You see, in the Hasmonean times, this hill was destroyed, and how it looks nowadays. It means the temple is lower in between. Tuvia Sugiv, the southern location of the temples, from the templemount.org.
I'm going to put the link, or maybe Rose, you can put the link to that in the chat at the top. People can go there and read the rest of this. I'll just show you the rest of this panoramic picture that I took. I thought this was so cool. There's the lookout. I think this is one of the ladies from the Philippines with me. And if Telesphore is here, he was here at the same time. And we were up there at sunrise to show you the, because we can see over here to where Moses was looking at the mountain. And but this railing here points east and west at the equinox time, because when the sun comes up, you can see the moon going down right above this building. But I don't see it here in this picture. So that's why I take people here. We stay right here. This circle area right here at the bottom beside the lady, they've just redid that, but that same stone circle, I believe, is where Yeshua was crucified. So that's where he was crucified, and all the trees are leaning away from this spot. And right, you can't see it, but right about here, where my mouse is where he's buried. And they got a house or a building on top of it, so it's difficult to see this one. Anyway, so that's my tour. That's a $3,000 tour. You all owe me $3,000 for this tour today. Now, I'll stop sharing. And if you can click that before we sign off, copy and paste that link in the side here. And let me see, I got one more picture I wanted to show you. Do I have it ready? Yeah. So I'll just show you this one. Share screen. So here's the, you can see there's the western wall, the little red building, red roof here. That is the church they built on top of the Dome of the Rock. That's the headquarters of Pilate. That's the Praetorium. That is the pavement that you read about in John. Here's the steps where Paul was arrested. And here's the temple. This is 400 42 stories tall going into the Gihon Spring. Now he has the bridge over here, and I'm kind of disagreeing with him because the eastern gate would be right here where my mouse is, and that bridge would go across. And as I search, there is a bridge abutment down here in the Kidron Valley today, which brings me up to the point on the Mount of Olives, which was just below where I said Yeshua was crucified. So that bridge abutment coming right across to the crucifixion site. And you can, if you want to take a picture of this right now while I got it up on your screen, Shift Command 3, you can take a picture of that. And that is also, you can also find this at Ernest Martin's website. Okay, anyone not ready? Okay, I'm taking it down now. Okay, so that's, you know, that's the big highlight of the tour when people realize that and realize where the city, the temple is. And right here in Isaiah, what we're reading about in Isaiah tells you that time that, you know, Isaiah said this in 700 BC, and 600 years later, they're actually tearing it down to the very dust of the ground. That is exciting for me to see and to understand and to be able to share. Okay, so that was 25 we read. Shona, are you going to continue reading 26? Are you okay to do that? Who's that?
I am.
Oh, you are. Okay.
Yes, sir. We ready?
Yep, go ahead. And just what Rose just read to you is going to come up in chapter 5, so I won't interrupt you, but it's chapter 5 ties into, I mean, verse 5 ties into Isaiah 25, verse 12. Okay, go ahead, Randy.
In that day, this song is sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. He sets up deliverance, walls and ramparts. Open the gates. Let the righteous nation which guards the truth enter in. The one steadfast of mind you guard in perfect peace, for he trusts in you. Trust in Jehovah forever, for in Jehovah is a rock of ages. For he shall bring down those who dwell on high. He lays the exalted city low. He lays it low to the earth. He brings it down to the dust. A foot tramples it down, feet of the poor, footsteps of the needy.
Okay, so stop. Wow, I had not seen this till just now. I said there are 7 footprints in Israel where the temple were. They're called the Gilgal. These are the Gilgal sites. Shiloh is a Gilgal site. The Joshua's altar is a Gilgal site. Gilgal itself in the Agamon, which is by the Jordan River in the Jordan Valley. There's another one near Jericho. How many have I listed there? 4 or 5? I may have missed a few, but Jerusalem, the city of David, is another footprint, a footprint. And Randy and Randall found these 2 more footprint sites down at Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia. Now, we haven't got them confirmed yet. I was hoping to do that last year. I was hoping to do that this winter, and everything's on hold again. So, Scott and Shona, go ahead.
Hey, Joe, on the timing here, Isaiah was written when, this verse here, because was this prophetic of what happened we just talked about? Or did that happen first and was described here?
Isaiah wrote this, like I said, Isaiah lived during the 701 BC. So he lived during that time period in Jerusalem. They found a ring from Isaiah at the temple in the excavation they've recently done. The Maccabees came and captured the temple back in 162, 164. BC, so 500 years, 600 years after Isaiah wrote this.
Awesome.
The Akra was captured back by after 20 years after that in 141 BC, and Simon tore down the Akra and tore down the whole mountain to the very bedrock. So 600 years after Isaiah says this, we now witness it being done. And 2,000 years later, I'm showing you this stuff, and people are still wondering, thinking they don't know where the temple is. Again, you got to know your history. You got to know chronology. So, and the footprint here, a foot shall tread it down. That is such a, wow, I never saw this before. Anyway, cool. Go ahead, Brandy.
Slide Ashley in real quick.
I'll take care of that.
Thank you, brother. The path of the righteous is uprightness. O upright one, you weigh the course of the righteous. Also, in the path of your right rulings, O Jehovah, we have waited for you. The longing of our being is for your name and for the remembrance of you. My being longs for you in the night. Also, my spirit within me seeks you earnestly. For when your right rulings are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world shall learn righteousness. The wrong finds favor, yet he shall not learn righteousness. In the land of straightforwardness, he acts perversely and does not see the excellency of Jehovah. O Jehovah, your hand is high, they do not see. They see the adore of the people and are ashamed. Also, let the fire of your adversaries consume them. O Jehovah, you establish peace for us, for you have also done all our works in us. O Jehovah, our Elohim, other masters besides you have had rule over us. Only in you do we make mention of your name. The dead do not live, the departed spirits do not rise. Therefore, you have visited and destroyed them and made all their remembrance to perish. You shall increase the nation, O Jehovah. You shall increase the nation. You are esteemed. You shall expand all the borders of the land. O Jehovah, in distress they shall visit you. They shall pour out a prayer when your disciplining is upon them. As a woman with child and about to give birth rides and cries out in her pain, so shall we be before your face, O Jehovah. We have conceived, we writhed in pain. We have given birth to wind. We have not accomplished deliverance in the earth, nor have the inhabitants of the world fallen. Yet let your dead live, together with my dead body, let them arise. Awake and sing, you who dwell in the dust, for your dew is a dew of light, and let the earth give birth to the departed spirits. Go, my people, enter your rooms. Shut the doors behind you, hide yourself, as it were, for a little while until the displeasure is past. For look, Jehovah is coming out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their crookedness, and the earth shall disclose her blood and no longer cover her killed ones.
Thank you. We have, as it were, brought forth wind. And I just, all our stuff is just like somebody farting. Just, it's not worth anything. But here in verse 19, Isaiah, the dead shall live. The dead shall live. He knew this. Back and during the days of Yeshua, they were arguing, do the dead live? And here's Isaiah saying they will. How did he know that? Isaiah understood the Masoret. Isaiah understood the Torah. So take everything else out of the Bible and just use the first 5 books. Look at the Masoret. You can understand what Isaiah is saying. He understood that you were going to live again. And he wanted to be a part of it. That's what the holy days teach you. That is an amazing statement as well. So we've already covered verse 20 numerous times. You guys don't want to talk about that now, do you?
When's it going to happen?
Well, when's he going to pour out his wrath? And when he pours out his wrath, we have to be in our chamber, our Kedar. For a while, whatever that while is. Okay, shall we go on to 27?
Well, for myself, that kind of describes right now, you know. It kind of describes what we're living in at the moment.
So I understand this. Isaiah was a prophet and he prophesied to Israel. The year is 700 AD or BC. Where's Israel at this time? Israel fell in 723 BC. They'd already gone into captivity. They were gone. Who's Isaiah talking to? Well, 20 years later, he's talking to Israel at the end times. Well, yeah, it is to us today. He is talking to us today. That's why I love listening to Isaiah. And you know, when I go for walks, if I'm not listening to Sally read, you know, as she narrates in my books, I'm listening to Isaiah. I listen to Isaiah over and over and over again. I don't understand all the stuff. So when I come back, I look up stuff that he's saying. What did he say there? What did he mean? He's one of the great prophets, and he still was cut in half because it didn't happen when they said it was going to happen, or it didn't happen in the day. You know, he said it today and the next day it didn't happen, so they cut him in half. Come on. He was talking to Israel 3,000 years later, 2,700 years later. Anyone else? 27. Who's got 27? Randy.
I got Sarkis.
Oh, Sarkis.
Yeah. Isn't that what happened to Yeshua? They were questioning him that he was going to destroy the temple.
We got sound problem with Sarkis?
Can't hear.
Can you hear me?
No.
Hold on. Hold on.
That was better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Isn't that what they did with Yeshua, accusing him that he said he will destroy the temple in 3 days, and because it didn't happen in three days, it's just the similarity of accusation here with Isaiah.
Yes.
And many other prophets. That's what the enemy does. He will accuse us wrongly, and therefore pass judgment.
So let me just.
Same thing with you when he said 2020.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I've been saying 2020 for a long time. And on January 1, 2020, I had people calling me up and I was being, being attacked. That's the only word I can say. That's not the word I want.
Ridiculed.
Ridiculed for 2020. And then that, remember back in 2020, I went back and researched it all again and went over my notes when they declared, who declared the pandemic at Passover, when they shut down the whole world in March.
Well, we're celebrating Passover.
I was trying to figure out what's going on. I expected a war. I expected war. But if you read the curse in Leviticus 26, it's war, famine, and plague. So I didn't exactly get it right, but I sure got the year right. But because I wasn't exactly 100% pinpoint accurate, these people started to attack me. Okay.
But Joe, you were right.
I
It
know
was
I was
war.
right.
No, there was war. The Great Reset, that's what's called. There was war against the global system to change it. And a lot of people think war is shooting bullets, but it's changing government systems.
Yes, but
Okay,
in the
so that is
meantime,
war.
by April, May, the end of April, May, I'm doing interviews. I'm being attacked in those interviews. And, if I was Isaiah, I'd been sawed in half. One guy's even say, we should start stoning you. Again, I'm not claiming to be Jehovah's prophet, but if we understand what a prophet is, we are all prophets speaking Torah. I'm sharing with you what I see, what I understand. I've never once said, thus says the Lord, but I have said, here's what he's showing us through the Sabbath and Jubilee cycles. And 2020 was a major test to see if I got it, if I'm understanding it right. And yeah, I am. And because of that, we didn't shut down SayTheMoon.com. Had nothing happened in 2020. If 2020 was just another year and everything carried on, we would not be doing these meetings now. I disappeared, gone, because that's what I said to do. And James was jumping up and down for joy because he wouldn't have to do all this work anymore. And I know James well enough that if James felt that I was lying, he'd have pulled the plug on the site by himself. Because I couldn't figure out how to put it back on. And we're still here. So yeah, I believe that in 2020, Europe was supposed to invade the Middle East. Okay, I believe that Iran was going to attack Europe. It hasn't happened. I said, okay, so I'm not perfect. But the chronology for events, world events, is lining up. So we keep looking, we keep trying to understand more and trying to refine our understanding better. So 2020 is a major step in that understanding. The next one, I believe, is going to be 2023, 2024. And we're watching. We're watching. So, okay, Kurt, I don't know if we kind of interrupted what you were saying. Is that what you wanted to point out? Did you get your point out that you were trying to make, or should we carry on with 27?
Carry on.
Carry on, because you and I forgot what we were talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to remember, but I didn't want to look dumb.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, Randy, go ahead.
In that day, Jehovah, with his severe sword, great and strong, punishes Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, that twisted serpent, and he shall kill the monster that is in the sea. In that day, sing to her a vineyard of red wine. I, Jehovah, do guard it. I water it every moment, lest any hurt it. I guard it night and day. Wrath is not in me. Who would set thorn bushes and weeds against me in battle? I would go through them. I would burn them together. or let him take hold of my strength and make peace with me. Let him make peace with me. Those who will come, he causes to take root in Jacob. Israel shall blossom and bud, and they shall fill the face of the world with fruit. He has smitten him, and as he struck the ones who are striking him, or as a killer, was he killed as he was killing? In measure, by sending her away, you contended with her. He shall take away by his rough wind in the day of the east wind. Therefore, by this the crookedness of Jacob is covered, and this is all the fruit of taking away his sin, when he makes all the stones of the slaughter place like chalk stones that are beaten to dust. Asherim and sun pillars rise no more. For the city of defense is lonely, a home forsaken and left like a wilderness. There the calf feeds, and there it lies down, and shall consume its branches. When its twigs are dry, they are broken off. Women come and set them on fire. For it is a people of no understanding. Therefore, he who made them has no compassion on them, and he who formed them shows them no favor. In that day, it shall be that Jehovah threshes from the channel of the river to the wadi of Egypt, and you shall be gathered one by one, O children of Israel. And in that day, it shall be that a great shofar is blown, and those who were perishing in the land of Asher and the outcasts in the land of Egypt shall come and shall worship Jehovah on the set apart mountain in Jerusalem.
I think that's pretty awesome just by itself. I don't even want to comment on it. Not that I'm trying to shut everyone else up, but if does anyone else want to say anything about that or have a question about that?
Randy, can you read your verse?
Which one?
Sorry, just trying to figure out where it was. In verse 9, it talks about Jacob, and then after Jacob, it says, this is the only price. And what does it say after that?
The only price.
Yeah, see, we have different versions.
Yeah.
Can you read your whole verse 9 again?
I can. Therefore, by the crookedness of Jacob is covered, and this is all the fruit of taking away his sin, when he makes all the stones of the slaughter place like chalk stones that are beaten to dust. Asherim and sun pillars rise no more.
Okay, let me read you my version. It says, assuredly, by this alone shall Jacob's sin be purged away. This is the only price for removing his guilt, that he makes all the altar stones like shattering blocks of chalk, with no sacred post left standing, nor any incense altar. That's the end of it.
So your verse is, I like what yours is. I finally like your version, Samba. Because, okay, the price for Jacob here, in order for the cost to Jacob is that he has to destroy all these things. All these things must be destroyed by Jacob in order for him to be redeemed. Am I hearing you correctly?
Assuredly, by this alone shall Jacob's sin be purged away. This is the only price for removing his guilt, that he make all the altar stones like shattered blocks of chalk, with no sacred posts left standing, nor any incense altar. In other words, stop worshiping the foreign idols.
No, more than that. Destroy everything about them.
Yeah.
Well,
That's the cost.
If I can add to that, what I understand and what I've seen, I was there, those stones, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're limestones, because that's what everything in Israel is limestone of some sort. And if that's the case, if it's a good hard limestone that's suitable to build with, like a chalk stone is not something you would build with. It's soft to begin with. It's not, you wouldn't build anything with it. In order to destroy a limestone and turn it into dust, you got to burn it. You've got to heat it in a fire to, 800,000 degrees F, somewhere in there, maybe hotter if you can. And then it turns into calcium oxide, which can be crushed into dust. And if you care to, which I don't think they would in this case, but then you could make mortar out of it. But those stones are going to be burned.
I think what Jehovah wants to make sure is that none of them are ever used in anything for him.
Yeah, and if that's what I would say too. It's not going to be reused. I just say that from a masonry perspective.
Turn the dust, throw it out in some road so people are trampling on it.
It's going to blow away, but it's going to have to be burned in order to do that in a high temperature, like in a kiln or whatever.
The incense altar has to do also with our prayers too. So he's saying like no prayers also. No worshiping of it as well.
Yeah, so it's getting rid of anything. And when I went over this last night, I was thinking, okay, so our museums with our historical artifacts that we have, ISIS went through the museums and they were destroying everything. And I thought that was terrible. When they blew up that big statue in, where was it? They blew up a big statue. I guess that's in Iraq. No, in Afghanistan.
Was it in Afghanistan?
I think, I don't know where it was. Anyway, they were actually being more righteous than I was.
Yes.
ISIS.
That's what I saw.
But then I go to these museums. I go to the Israeli museum. There's so much stuff there that's going to be destroyed if we do this. And part of me is trying to, do I really understand this right? Is that really what are we really going to destroy our history like that? Do we want it? Well, like all these things going through my brain.
But that's part of the problem, right? Look what's going on in Canada today. We're destroying all of our monuments because we're saying, oh, well, McDonald wasn't a good guy, so we're destroying that.
Yeah.
We're destroying our history. And when you destroy the history, you forget.
Well, that's sort of my reasoning. So
right.
Are we going to destroy all these museum pieces?
Right. But we have to remember, who are we supposed to be worshiping? I'm not supposed to be worshiping McDonald.
Well, okay. So that comes back down to what we talked about last week, bowing down to the serpent on the cross. We were told to pray to it by Jehovah, not to worship it. We began to worship it in Hezekiah's day and he destroyed it. Are we worshiping these museum pieces?
I guess the point is we don't need the museum pieces. What we need is the storytelling in the books. We need our history books, but they're changing our history books too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm torn. I guess I'm torn. Wow, I'm torn. Do I do what Jehovah says or do I do what I think is right?
Aren't we supposed to utterly destroy all of these relics?
Well, that's what I'm wrestling with, Glenn.
I think we are. Because if we hang on to them, there's a potential that someone could decide to reignite them or re-enliven them or bring them back before people to worship. And in fact, if they're in the museum, people are going to see them. And
But if we don't know our history, could we repeat it again? Could we go back to it? Could someone else come up with that great new idea and lead us all because we don't know our history?
well, if we're following Jehovah's way, we really don't need a history. We need to go forward, not backwards, except for his.
Agreed, but at the end of the seventh millennium, Gog and Magog come against Jehovah because they didn't learn the lessons over the next millennium. So again, so like somebody didn't learn.
Well, we have to write them down and maybe, I mean, I don't know that we need the actual artifacts. We do need the history.
Well, then the histories are going to have pictures of them. Because
Well, they can describe them.
You describing it's not the same way Kurt describes it.
True.
Michelle, what do you think?
I think it's exactly what you're thinking.
What am I thinking? I don't know what I'm thinking. Don't
Okay, I'm going to tell you what you're thinking. You're thinking that yes, it's correct to get rid of some of the things that are pagan, but those who are erasing history are rewriting history for what they want. And those that are rewriting history might not be in accordance with Jehovah. And that is why it's being erased. So that if you can't look back on history, you make history and it is what it is.
But doesn't Jehovah say he's going to destroy all of them anyway? He says he's going to take every pillar down, etc.
That is true, but don't you see history rewriting itself right now that is deceiving so many people?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the history that's in the museum. This 4,000-year-old Egyptian artifact, this 5,000-year-old Babylonian ziggurat, right? The artifacts coming from Nimrod.
How about that tower with and I'm not sure the name of it. There's a tower where there's a cornerstone missing, and the people have actually erected hundreds and hundreds of them all over the place. That is almost a replica of it. They actually used a sort of a printing machine to make the blocks, and they put them all together, and they're all over the place. They've been going up for a couple of years now. I think some of you know who I'm talking about or what I'm talking about.
No, I have no clue.
One that ISIS destroyed, and they managed to get enough pictures and details of it so they could rebuild it. It's the cornerstone referred to in your dollar bill and in other areas. Let me find out. I'll get back to you.
Okay,
I forget the name of it.
So what I'm wrestling with is we're not worshiping these things in the museum, although we might be in a different way through Christmas and stuff like that. But these things in the museum, they're historical artifacts. Like I don't know. I value what I learned in the museum, and I'm amazed by the things, going through the Jerusalem Museum, the history that's there is stunning. It's awesome. It's great. They've got statues of Venus. They got statues of the lady with the 500 breasts. I know who these people represent. I know Artemis is who I'm thinking of. I know what they stood for. But to see that history that we were duped back then, to just erase it, I don't know. Sarkis, help me out.
I'm going to approach it three ways. One is, first
I'm
of all,
already confused, Sarkis. I'm already confused.
It's okay.
Now you get
It's all
three
right.
more different ways.
We don't own these. Cultures or countries who own or control these artifacts, they could decide to do that. At the time when Israel went into the promised land, they were conquering, and therefore they had the right to destroy it.
Israel's going to be in control when they take over the land of Israel. So the museum in Israel, just the museum in Israel, what do we do with the pieces there?
Oh, hold on. Before you answer that question, I'm giving you my 3 points here first.
Okay.
Okay. As we don't own it, so we have no right to do anything about it because we are not in theocracy. We're not. So we have an issue there. The second point is the apostles lived through it. They went and preached the gospel among the heathen, the pagans. They didn't go and destroy them. They actually, people, when they were converted, they started to destroy. When we see an example where people burned their books that was worth 50,000, pieces of silver or something like that. And the point is, when people change, are converted, they will make those decisions. Okay. The third thing is, Jehovah did it with the flood. He cleansed it and he eliminated everything to start fresh. And what happens? Bang, we have to start all over again with idol worship. And so you can destroy something. That doesn't mean it's not going to come back and come back with vengeance. Okay.
Yeah.
So the museums actually prove the Bible is right.
Yes.
Prove the scripture is historically correct. And
Okay,
that
so yeah, okay, so there the museum pieces are proving the Bible correct.
Yeah.
The Bible's not going to be destroyed. So when we read the Bible, we're not going to know what it's talking about. The same as us trying to figure out this stuff. We got to go back and figure out the Hebrew stuff. Same as what I showed you today, talking about the temple. I don't know any of that stuff about the Akra, but until you understand it, you're not going to understand what you're reading. Do we not need these things? These museum pieces I'm talking about, do we not need them?
yes and no. Yes, we need them to prove the scripture is right and prove to the world that they need to repent. No, we don't need them because when people see evil, they end up to emulate it and practice it. And so it's a two-edged sword. It's good and it's bad, but preferably not to have it. Because when you see evil, you end up doing evil. And that's the tendency of mankind.
Okay. Okay, well,
I put it up in the chat. If you click on it, that's the one I was referring to. It was a museum piece. It was not restored, but it was preserved. And it is actually a symbol of Luciferian worship. It's the Temple of Baal.
Okay.
And that's the one that they're erecting in many cities all over the world. And in fact, there's an article attached to that. So when you keep the history, sometimes this is what happens.
Yep.
And now Hezekiah, there wasn't Hezekiah who came and destroyed, well, it was several kings
Hezekiah
who destroyed many of these things in that time. Of course, they were worshiping it at the time too. So I think it's very similar. So I don't know. I know what you mean. I'm a bit torn. You want to keep the relics because it's our history, but then again, weak-minded people will turn it around and revive this kind of worship or this kind of evil way.
Okay, so
yes.
now let me yeah, so now I'm a bond servant. Right, so I just do what I'm told. Now Sarkis.
Yeah, one more thing concerning our current history being canceled or erased. I think that's part of the curse is when we don't submit to Jehovah and don't keep his Torah, other nations, other people will erase our history because that's part of the curse. And if we don't repent, that's happening right in front of our eyes. That means if our history is being canceled, we're next. And repentance is required at this point.
Okay, thank you all. Shall we move on to Psalm 135? Who's up, Randy?
That's me.
Go ahead, Shane.
Praise Jehovah. Praise the name of Jehovah. Praise him, servants of Jehovah. Those who stand in the house of Jehovah, in the courts of the house of our God. Praise Jehovah, For Yehovah is good. Sing praises to his name, for it is full of delight. For Yehovah has chosen Jacob to himself, and Israel for his peculiar treasure. For I know that Yehovah is great, and our Lord is above all gods. Everything Yehovah pleased, he did in the heavens and in the earth, and in the seas and all deep places. He causes the vapors to rise from the end of the earth. He makes lightnings for the rain. He brings wind out of his storehouses. He who struck the firstborn of Egypt, both of man and animal, who sent signs and wonders into your midst, O Egypt, on Pharaoh and all his servants, who struck great nations and killed mighty kings. Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of Bashan, and all the kingdoms of Canaan, and gave their land as an inheritance to Israel his people. Your name, O Yehovah, endures forever, and your memorial, O Yehovah, throughout all generations. For Yehovah will judge his people, and he will have pity on his servants. The idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they do not speak. They have eyes, but they do not see. They have ears, but they do not hear, nor is there breath in their mouths. Those who make them are like them, everyone who trusts in them. Bless Yehovah, O house of Israel. Bless Yehovah, O house of Aaron. Bless Yehovah, O house of Levi. You who fear Yehovah, bless Yehovah. Blessed is Yehovah out of Zion, who dwells at Jerusalem. Praise Yehovah.
Thank you, Shane. Again, the Psalms are one of my weak spots, so I have, anyone got any comments on this? Anyone got anything they'd like to say about this?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious what his name is. It's only used 17 times. You know, I think he's got the point across.
What, you mean that word Lord?
Yeah, capital L-O-R-D.
Lordy, Lordy.
And in the front of my Bible, it says that anytime you see that, it's in place of Yod He Vav He or YHWH or VH, whatever you want to use.
Yeah.
That's his proper name. 17 times.
Has this one ever been put to words or to a song? Has anyone got this as a song?
It's actually 18 times.
Okay. No partakers. Okay. John, I didn't think we were going to get this far. So John 9.
That's me. I got to get rid of Riel. Hold on a second. Okay, you have to be quiet, sweetie.
Oh, we can get someone else if you want.
No, hold on. He's crying because he doesn't want to go down for a nap because he got woken up because the kids are making noise down the vent. Okay, and you said it was John 9, right?
John 9.
Okay. John 9. Okay.
Now, before we start John 9, which I should have done, you got to remember that this is continuing from John 7 and 8. John 7, Yeshua is at the temple. John 8 is the 8th day. And John 9 is still on the 8th day. Okay.
And he passed, and as he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Yeshua answered, it was not that this man sinned, or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming, when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am in the light of the world. Having said these things, he spit on the ground, and he made mud with his saliva, and he anointed the man's eyes with mud. And he said to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. And so he went and he washed, and he came back seeing. The neighbors and those who had seen him before, as were beggars, were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." And he kept saying, I am the man." And so they said to him, "Then how are your eyes opened?" And he answered, "The man called Jesus, Yeshua, made mud, and he anointed my eyes, and he said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' And so I went and I washed, and I received my sight." And they said to him, "Where is he?" And he said, "I do not know." And they brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. And now it was Sabbath day when Yeshua made the mud and opened his eyes. And so the Pharisees again asked him how he had received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner do such signs?" And there was a division among them. And so they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes?" And he said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight. And they asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But how he now sees, we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He's of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He's of age. Ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that I thought I was blind, that though I was blind, I now see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" And he answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" And they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Why, this is an amazing thing. Do you not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes? We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they cast him out. Yeshua heard that they had cast him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And he answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Yeshua said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." He said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshipped him. Yeshua said, "For judgment I came into the world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" Yeshua said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, 'We see,' your guilt remains."
Very good. Thank you, Sombra.
Wow, what a testimony.
That's
Over and
awesome.
over and over and over again, proving a point.
So who's this guy? This guy is you. This guy is each one of you. Michelle.
So is it better to keep people in ignorance? If they don't see, they're not guilty, I guess, right?
Yeah, but we just read a little earlier, the ignorance are going to be killed.
Just playing the devil's advocate, of course, you know what I mean. I mean, that is pretty stark.
Yeah. So this guy, he's just trying to get into the pool, trying to, is this the guy that gets in the pool? No, that's not the one.
No, he's the
Somebody
blind
else.
one, not the crippled
Yeah.
one.
He's
He
just
does
like
become a
us.
disciple, though. In the end, doesn't he end up in Britain?
What is
See,
it, blind Bartimaeus?
you're jumping ahead of me, Glenn. Yes, he does. So what happens to him, Glenn?
He ends up glorifying God right all the way through the rest of his life.
We don't hear anything about this guy again in Torah or in the Gospels. But then Yeshua is killed in 31 AD. By 35 AD, just 4 years later, Paul is persecuting everybody. And he rounds up Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Well, I don't know about Nicodemus, but I'll throw him in there anyway, but I'm not sure if that's correct. Mary, Martha, Mary, the mother of Yeshua, and a whole bunch of other people. And he puts them on a boat and sends them off into the Mediterranean Sea with no food, no water, no oars. Just lets the wind blow them out. They're going to die. And one of the servants of one of these people goes running off and jumps off the dock, dives in the water and swims out to the boat to get in the boat with them. One of the people Paul missed. And the boat floats away out into the Mediterranean and miraculously shows up on the African coast of, there goes my brain. Carthage. Thank you, Glenn. And then there they get some oars and a sail, and they sail up to Marseille. And Marseille is a great Roman trading post, which brought the tin from England that Joseph of Arimathea used to mine and send and look after. In that boat is this blind guy. What's his name, Glenn?
I forgot. I've been trying to find out. Begin with an S. I forget.
Yeah, it does. It does. It begins with an S. It's Sidonius.
Okay.
He becomes Sidonius of I. Now it's I'm not sure if I'm saying AIX in France. Martha and Mary become founders of different churches there. Lazarus becomes a founder of a different church. These churches all convert over to Catholicism 300-400 years later. But at the time when they're founded, they're teaching Torah. This Sidonius of I is what you can find him in Wikipedia. He's also known as Sidonius with a C-E-D, and Restitutus, and also known as Saint Maximus. Now, the history gets a little bit mixed up about him, but the book of Acts isn't finished being written. This guy's name is in the second chapter, or what's the last chapter, the next chapter of the book of Acts, and so is your name. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to do anything great. You just got to go out there and teach. Hey, I was blind. He wrote about me. I'm the guy that I was blind. He healed me. He's real. Only God can heal the blind man. And I'm living proof that he did that. You know, all y'all, you hated Torah at one time. You hated people that taught Torah. You was also blind. Okay, I'm turning into a sermon. I'm done. Not going to do that. But anyway, that's who that guy is. You can find him under those names. And he was amongst those that went out with Joseph of Arimathea, or Saint Joseph of Arimathea, whatever you want to call him. And there's a lot more great history there. everyone that's mentioned in the book of Acts and by the Apostle Paul and all the epistles, they went on to do great works. All these people here that are here with us today, they're going to do great works. Those that have gone out from us, I'm hoping they're going to do great works. And your testimonies is that you're a prophet, you know the Torah, you know or are learning the sabbatical and jubilear cycles, so you understand the chronology, and it's helping you to understand the prophecies that go with it. So 5 o'clock.
Can we jump back?
Sorry?
Can we jump back a chapter, talk about one verse?
Oh, you did that. You wanted to do this beforehand. I said, no, now you're going to do it. What do you want to go to?
Did you say no? I'm sorry.
No, I don't remember what I said. I forgot what you're talking about though.
Chapter 8, verse 41. Why is he still talking to these guys? I think I would have lit him up. I mean, he says, we were not born of whoring. So are they calling Yeshua's mom a whore?
Then they said to him, we are not born of fornication. We have one Father God. So they're not calling her a whore, they're calling him a bastard.
Right.
Right?
Because she was pregnant before she was married. That's their interpretation. They don't believe in the virgin birth. That's just what they're calling it, right?
Yes. So somehow they'd gone back and got that story. So this was 30 years ago. You know, how would I know anything about Randy's birth 30 years ago? Right? I wouldn't. I'd have to go dig that up. I'm looking for dirt on you. Right? So that's what they're doing. That's sort of what they've done. Any more?
And he just kept his cool and didn't sin and kill him like I would have. So
yeah. Again, everything that we've read, chapter 7, 8, and 9, took place at the Feast of Sukkot. Out of my belly shall flow living waters. I am the light of the world. This is all taking place on the last great day of the feast, the 7th day. And now this blind man incident, chapter 8, when he's arguing with everybody, is on the 8th day. They're about to stone him because he says, I am. At the end of chapter 8, verse 58, Jesus said to them, most assuredly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. Then they took up stones to stone him. But Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. And then on his way out, he sees this blind man, picks a spit in the dirt and heals him as he was going out the door. Right? That's the picture. That's where we are.
You muted?
Pardon me? What'd you say, Glenn?
He might have been talking about me because I was unmuted.
Oh. I don't know. Anyway, so that's the picture now. Remember the chronology. So when we come back to chapter 10, it's going to make more sense to you. Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
I don't mean to actually change the subject. Have you been watching Rebecca Bitterman's ripening of the barley, and do we have any indications of anything for the future?
I've been keeping up with Rebecca. She talks to me all the time, and I've been seeing the pictures of the barley. The barley's growing.
Any indication when it will be right?
She said it was at least 2 or 3 weeks later than last year with regards to its germination.
Yeah.
But I don't know where it's at in relation now.
Right now it's green grass, and that's all we know. So you have to wait and be like everyone else. No man can know the day or the hour, so we have to wait and watch.
You go put a tent on it, warm it up, speed it up.
So no, the poppies of the the poppies, they've sprouted up. They're usually there when the barley is ready, but they've only just started. So is that another sign? I don't know. It could be. We're watching. We're watching. So I've already, I've expected a 13th month this year. We are going to start the 12th month here next week, this week, isn't it? On the 4th. Yeah.
Yes.
This week. So the 12th month will begin. And we're going to be looking a little bit closer. I do not know any more than that right now. I don't know if there's any heads, if it's in flowering, if it's in the boot stage. I don't know anything.
It's been leaning towards adding a month, but
Yeah.
we're not sure.
We're not sure. Sombra.
So in verse 38, it says, he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshiped him. There is no rebuke that follows after that. It just says, Jesus said, for judgment came into the world that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. There is a strong instruction, teaching, thought in our system that we don't worship Yeshua, we worship the Father. They are one and the same. And so the fact that this blind man was worshiping Yeshua, right here, there was no rebuke. I believe, and he worshiped him, and it was just fine.
Yeah, I have no problem with it. I don't, what'd you say? There's a thing going on that we don't? What?
In the messianic world, so because in the Christian world, there's, oh, Jesus, praise Jesus, praise Jesus. It's all about Jesus. And in opposition to that, we have not we, you and me, but we as a movement have turned away from the Jesus worship movement and said it's all about the Father, all about the Father, all about the Father. Well, it's all about both. And it's okay to worship or pray to Jesus because they're one and the same. It's okay to praise Jesus. It's okay to worship Jesus, Yeshua. I don't really, either way of saying it's not my issue.
So let me jump in on there.
Okay.
It's a growth process. It's what, I say in the newsletter, maturing.
Yeah.
Are you mature? And we realize our anti-Jehovah stance by believing in everything Jesus and the Jesus that did away with the law. And we come out of that and realize, no, Jesus never did away with the law. The Catholic Church did, and the Protestants did. And we were part of that. So then to make the distinction, and sort of like the code, we stop saying Jesus, we start saying Yeshua. Then everyone who says Jesus, okay, we know that they're talking about the pagan Jesus idea today. And then as we mature, well, that's not even right, because we read Jesus, like I don't always change Jesus to Yeshua when I'm quoting the Bible here. But I have come to know, and you all know this, that Yeshua, Jesus, is Jehovah. But to understand that, you have to understand that Jesus is Yeshua. Because when he says, I am your salvation, then that means I am your Yeshua. It starts to make more sense, right? So that's why I do that. But to to people who believe in Jesus, who don't yet know that he's Jehovah, who are worshiping him, there's nothing wrong with that. They just haven't matured. Like the little girl you have there doesn't know how to be a woman yet. It's the same thing. We're all at different levels learning, but we are learning. So I got kicked off 2 radio stations because I used the name Jesus. And because I didn't have the technical skills to work the station, nobody helped me. That was another wake-up call to the ultra right movement of the messianic groups, which, yesterday you were in church worshiping statues. Today you're a messianic and you're so zealous and hateful of everything that's not like you. I said, I can't be like that. So we have to watch that. We have to be in loving and encumbering and nurturing to help them to grow. So right now we see, Christians are being killed and persecuted in Pakistan. Women are being raped and paraded down the street because they are Christians. The things that's going on in Pakistan right now are horrifying, and in Egypt. But because those people aren't keeping Torah, we sort of, okay, it's okay. Well, that was us just a little while ago. So there's a stepping stones that we need to go back and help those people to come to understand. Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's painful. And they don't get it, and they're going to call you names and they're going to crucify you. But you still got to go back, because somebody came back and got you. And Yeshua, Jehovah, sent somebody to get you. So you got to do the same thing. Anyone else? Torah terrorist. Yes, exactly, Lori Don. Hopefully I wasn't that bad. I know I was. I was a Torah terrorist. I repent. I am sorry. I regret it. I should never have done it. But it's like that little 3-year-old that just terrifying everybody. It just, you just want to throttle the pants off them. Yeah.
The goal of Torah is to love one another. The goal of Torah is to love Jehovah. The goal of Torah is to love one another. And if we don't get that from Torah, if what we're getting from Torah is Torah terrorism, we're missing the mark.
Agreed. Anyone else got anything, or shall we wrap up? I think I did not expect to get this much covered today. We have covered a lot, and thank you all for doing that. I thought today is one of my favorite days. I got to talk about the temple that's not there, the Akra that nobody can see.
Joe, there's one item we need to discuss.
Yes, sir.
It's the new moon observance. It would be Monday evening. I guess it will be. First of all, I have to say that I won't be hosting it, but I've found an alternate, and his name is Randy. And so at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time, I won't be there. I'll be stuck working. We'll have a new moon observance.
So just for those that don't know, this is not a formal or a set apart thing. People just show up, and different people go out and look at the moon at different times. That is Monday night?
Monday evening.
Monday night. So whenever the moon is about to show up in your area, you go out and look for it, and we show up at the meeting and say, hey, I saw it. I didn't see it. Like for me, it's overcast. It's been overcast for a long time. It's gloomy day today. But you can do that, and we meet together there. And you just come in, fellowship for a little bit. It's not a, nothing formal about it.
Nothing formal, but it's
Kurt-
becoming a
It's becoming a
thing. People expect to do it. Been asked several times today.
Kurt
And,
is supposed to be the teacher there. He's really dropping the ball this week.
Yeah, somebody's got to work.
Yeah.
Keep the
Anyway,
lights on.
Use the same link we used for today.
Yes. So the same link that's in the newsletter is the one you used for today, just 5 o'clock Central Time.
Come, bring your questions, bring your report, bring your shofar if you got one, bring your libation if you care to. Bring your questions if you have questions of the calendar, how it works, various things. We try to keep it on calendar issues and ask things astronomical. You know, whatever's going on in the heavens, it's a time to become aware, and we're all learning. There's no real expert involved, and we're just trying to muddle our way through and learn what we can and share what we
We're
have
more
learned.
than muddling. We do know kind of what we're doing now.
Yeah,
The Sanhedrin's just learning how to get back to it.
yeah, maybe they'll phone us up when they need some lessons.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then we will wrap this up for another week. And I want to thank you all for participating and joining us. Those of you who are listening at home, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Again, that helps our ratings with YouTube, and they will put this in front of other groups, other people that they think would like to hear what we have to say. It does help. So also, if you have comments about the things we've said today, put them in the comments below and let other people hear what you have to say. If you send it just to me, I'm the only one that hears it. And sometimes I don't always respond. I try to, but sometimes if I don't think it's a question, I just don't. So what else? What else am I forgetting? There's something else. Scissors? No? Okay. Glenn, can you close us out with prayer, sir?
Sure. Father, great Father in heaven, creator of all things, we know that all things were created by you and are for you. We ask you to help us become good bond servants for you. We know you're mindful in our lives and you protect us, especially those of us who keep your way. We're concerned about our brothers and sisters who are ignorant in the way and still are loved ones. Please protect them and keep them. We hear about them in the fires, we hear about them in the floods and the tornadoes. Some of them are family, and we ask you to watch for them, and especially watch out for us. All of us are brothers and sisters here and all over the world who keep your way. We ask you to bring us back whole and provided for and safe for next Sabbath. And we so look forward to your Sabbath, and we are thankful for that. In your holy name, we say these things. Father Jehovah, thank you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Glenn. Again, thank you, everybody. And I guess Shabbat Shalom. Bye. See you next week.